Story 1. Your brother legally owns it, my parents said after stealing my Mustang. So I had them charged and now they are begging. So I, 22 male, have been living in my brother's shadow my entire life. My little brother, 20 male Jason, has always been treated like he's God's gift to humanity, while I'm basically just the invisible kid nobody gives a crap about. It's been this way since we were kids. I still remember this one time in 8th grade when I won first place in the district science fair. Spent weeks building this kick-ass solar-powered water filtration system. When I came home with the blue ribbon, my mom just said, "That's nice, dear," and went right back to helping Jason make a poster for his social studies project that was due the next day. He got a C+ on it, and they took him for ice cream to celebrate his hard work. Christmas was always a complete joke in our house. Jason's pile of presents would be stacked to the ceiling. All the latest gaming crap, best clothes, whatever he'd been whining about for the past 6 months. My pile. Whatever cheap, maybe a flannel shirt if I was lucky, and occasionally something actually useful for my projects. Practical gifts, Mom would say, with this smug look like she deserved a medal for buying me work gloves, while Jason got a freaking Nintendo. Dad was always out in the backyard with Jason, teaching him to throw a football or building his science projects. I'd be in the garage alone, watching YouTube videos to learn how to fix stuff because nobody had time to show me. Whenever I asked Dad for help, it was always in a minute that somehow stretched into years. Eventually, I stopped asking. The golden child BS went way beyond gifts and attention. Jason would literally wreck Mom's car, and they'd just shrug it off. Accidents happen, honey. I'd come home 5 minutes past curfew after working a late shift at the hardware store and get grounded for 2 weeks. Different planet, different rules when you're the favorite. When we were 16 and 14, Jason went through this phase where he'd borrow my stuff without asking. One time, he took my iPod to school, back when those were a thing, and some kid stole it from his backpack. When I got pissed, my parents told me I needed to be more understanding because he's going through a lot right now. The lot being that he didn't make first string on the JV basketball team. They never replaced it, but 2 weeks later, Jason had a brand new one because he needs music for his workouts. I figured out pretty early that nobody in our house had my back except me. So I shut up, kept my head down, and worked my ass off. Got my first job washing dishes at this greasy spoon diner. Saved every penny. Started learning trades from YouTube and the old guys at the hardware store where I eventually got hired. Didn't need their validation anyway. My parents had this blind spot that was exactly my size and shape. They'd remember to buy Jason's favorite cereal, but forget I was allergic to peanuts. They'd drive 4 hours to see Jason's regional baseball game, but couldn't be bothered to attend my high school graduation because it was such a long ceremony and parking would be a nightmare. It sounds like I'm making this crap up, but I swear I'm not. It's like living in some kind of twisted sitcom where I'm the side character nobody remembers. Oh yeah, there's another kid too, son. The thing is, Jason was just as bad as my parents in his own way. Entitled, selfish, smug about his golden child status. He'd rub it in my face constantly. Mom said yes to me, but she'd probably say no to you. He'd smirk when I was a kid. Or he'd accidentally break my stuff and then act all innocent when I got mad. By the time we were in high school, I'd pretty much accepted my place in the family hierarchy. Keep expectations low and you don't get disappointed, you know? I focused on stuff I could control. My grades, my jobs, my friends, my projects. So here's where my grandpa, 72 male, comes into the story. Grandpa Joe was the only one who ever really saw me. Ironically, he was my dad's father. Former Marine and old-school mechanic who could strip an engine blindfolded if he had to. The man was a legend with his hands. While my parents were busy cheering at Jason's soccer games or obsessing over his school plays, I'd be at Grandpa's garage learning how to change oil, replace spark plugs, and eventually rebuild carburetors. Those were the days I actually felt like someone gave a damn about me. "You got something special in those hands, boy," he'd tell me while we worked side by side on whatever beater he was fixing up. "Your dad never had the patience for this stuff. Always too busy chasing the next promotion, the next big thing." He'd shake his head like he couldn't quite figure out where he went wrong with his son. Grandpa saw right through my parents' favoritism BS. This one time when I was 15, my parents forgot my birthday. Like, completely forgot. They remembered the day before that Jason had a swimming competition the next day, and the whole family had to go. My mom actually said, "Oh, it's your birthday tomorrow, isn't it? We'll celebrate next weekend." They didn't even get me a cake. When Grandpa found out, he was pissed. Showed up at our house that night with a toolbox wrapped in newspaper. Inside was this beautiful set of precision screwdrivers I'd been eyeing for months. "Happy birthday, kiddo," he said, loud enough for my parents to hear from the kitchen. Some things are worth celebrating properly. Every Christmas, when I'd open those practical gifts from my parents, socks, school supplies, whatever, Grandpa would sneak me something real. Quality tools mostly, stuff I still use today. One year, my parents actually complained about it. My mom had the nerve to say, "He doesn't need to be spoiled, Joe." Like a decent set was equivalent to the new iPhone Jason had just unwrapped. Grandpa just stared at her down like she was an idiot. Recognizing talent ain't spoiling, it's investing. Then he winked at me. When I was 18, Grandpa got diagnosed with Parkinson's. Shit news, obviously. He couldn't drive anymore, so he called me up one weekend. Told me he had something for me. Said it might not be pretty, but it had good bones. That was one of his favorite expressions. I drove over to his place thinking maybe he was giving me some of his old tools or something. Instead, there was this 1967 Mustang Fastback sitting in his driveway. Faded Highland green with more rust than paint, torn seats, and an engine that made sounds I didn't know a car could make. But holy shit, it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Grandpa handed me the keys and told me he'd been saving it for me since I was 12. Said he'd watched how my parents treated me all those years and figured I deserved something that was just mine. He'd planned to restore it himself, but his hands weren't working right anymore with the Parkinson's starting to take hold. Your dad never appreciated muscle cars, he said, running his hand over the rusted hood. But you'll bring her back to life. I'm not gonna lie, I had to turn away for a minute. Got something in my eye or whatever. When I drove that rust bucket home, my parents actually laughed at it when they saw it in the driveway. Dad didn't even look up from his phone when I told him about it. Just said, "Don't waste money on that death trap. My father was too obsessed with this pile of junk." Pile of junk? Nah, now I see what Grandpa was trying to tell me. Mom just complained about the oil stains on the concrete. Jason, though, his eyes lit up like it was Christmas morning when he saw it. "Wow, that's gonna be so badass when it's fixed up, though Grandpa never showed it to me," he said. And for once, I felt like I had something he envied, something he couldn't just get by whining to our parents about it. For 1 year, spent every spare minute on that car. Every paycheck went straight to parts after rent and food. Learned to weld. Taught myself how to rebuild the engine by watching endless YouTube videos and reading forums. My hands were permanently stained with grease, fingernails never completely clean, arms covered in little burns and cuts. My room was stacked with Chilton manuals and printouts of wiring diagrams. I'd fall asleep thinking about valve timing and wake up planning bodywork. When things got bad at home, which was always, I'd escape to the garage and lose myself in the restoration. There's something almost meditative about working on cars when you get in the zone. Just you and the machine. Everything else fades away. I scrounged parts from junkyards, swap meets, online forums, rebuilt the 390 V8 myself, piece by piece. Sanded the body down to bare metal and painstakingly fixed the rust spots, learning to weld and shape metal as I went. Did the paint job in my buddy's uncle's shop after hours. Traded labor for booth time. Reupholstered the interior. The whole thing. The day I finally got that engine running right, hearing that deep rumble of the V8 coming to life, man, it was like everything I'd worked for finally paying off. The Highland green paint gleamed in the sun. Yes, I went with the bullet color, sue me. The black leather interior smelled like a new start, and when I took her for that first real drive, windows down, engine growling, for once in my life, I had something that was truly mine, something I'd built with my own two hands that nobody could take credit for. She was my achievement, the thing nobody could take away from me. See, the thing about growing up as the ignored kid is you get used to people not really wanting your stuff. Nobody was fighting to borrow my clothes or play with my games because in their eyes, Jason always had the better version anyway. So I wasn't prepared for what happened when, for once in my life, I had something that was actually worth envying. And man, did Jason envy that Mustang. So after I got the Mustang running properly, Jason couldn't stop talking about it. Every single time I drove it, he'd be at the window watching like a kid staring at an ice cream truck. Whenever I'd pull in, he'd come racing out to the garage. "Can I sit in it?" Just for a minute. At first, I didn't mind that much. It was actually kind of nice having someone appreciate all the work I'd put in. My parents sure as hell didn't care. Dad just complained about tools taking up space in the garage, and Mom kept making these passive-aggressive comments about wasting money instead of saving for a real future. Whatever the hell that meant. But then Jason's requests started getting more annoying. It went from, "Can I sit in it?" to, "Can I drive it to prom? Just for one night? I'll be super careful." Then it was, "Let me take it to the beach this weekend." My friend would freak if I picked him up in this. Always with that entitlement in his voice, like, of course I'd say yes because that's what everyone always did with Jason. I always said no. Not because I wanted to be a jerk to my brother. I said no because I knew Jason. This is the kid who broke 3 phones in 1 year. The kid who borrowed dad's expensive golf clubs for a single afternoon and somehow lost half the set. The kid who never took care of anything because he never had to. Something always got replaced when he broke it. He didn't have to be responsible for anything because of course my parents had his back. And you think I'm crazy to let him take my painstakingly restored classic Mustang after watching that track record his whole life? Hell no. The tension kept piling up. Jason would roll his eyes whenever I refused, saying stuff like, "It's just a car, dude. You're so freaking uptight. Just a car. Just a car." Like I hadn't spent an entire year every spare dollar rebuilding the damn thing. Then my parents started making these little comments at dinner. Stuff like, sharing is part of being a good brother, and that car just sits in the garage most of the time anyway. Classic setup in our house. What Jason wants, Jason gets. Except this time I wasn't budging. My dad tried to guilt trip me one night. When I was your age, I always shared with my brothers. That's what family does. I almost laughed in his face. This from the guy who literally hid the good snacks in his office so he wouldn't have to share with his kids. I just replied, "When you were my age, did you rebuild a classic car from scratch with money you earned working your ass off while going to college?" That shut him up for about 5 minutes. My mom tried a different angle. She cornered me in the kitchen one morning with her coffee cup and that fake concerned look she gets. "Honey, I'm worried about you getting so attached to material things. It's just metal and rubber. Relationships are what matter in life." Funny how they care about maintaining a good relationship when it comes to Jason. Things came to a head when Jason got accepted to State University. My parents threw this massive party, invited everyone they knew. I mean, yeah, good for him, but it's not like State is Harvard. It's a decent school with a 70% acceptance rate that he barely got into with his mediocre grades and dad's alumni connection. But whatever. I showed up and still congratulated him. During dinner, Dad stood up and announced they had a surprise for Jason. Dad started talking about how Jason would need transportation for campus, which was about 40 minutes from home, and looked right at me, saying they thought I should let Jason use the Mustang while he was at school. The entire table turned to look at me, expecting me to just smile and play along like always. Like I was going to say, "Sure, take the car I spent 1 year rebuilding, the one possession I have that actually means something to me. No problem at all." I just said, "No, that's not happening." 3 simple words. You'd think I'd suggested we sacrifice the family dog from the way they all reacted. Dead silence at the table. Dad tried to smooth it over by saying we'd discuss it later, but I shut that down too. Told him there was nothing to discuss. It was my car. End of story. Mom jumped in saying I shouldn't be selfish because Jason needed reliable transportation for this important time in his life. Like college is somehow more important than, I don't know, my entire existence maybe? I told them to buy him a car like they bought him everything else he ever wanted. That's when Dad got pissed. Slammed his hand on the table, nearly knocking over the gravy boat, and said I was being ridiculous over just a car. I stood up and finally let out what I'd been holding in for years. I told him it was my car that I rebuilt myself, that I had the title for, that I paid for with my money, and I wasn't giving it to Jason just because he wanted it. Told them for once in their lives to tell their precious golden child no. Said maybe Jason could learn what it's like to actually work for something instead of having it handed to him on a silver platter. Mom looked at me like she couldn't believe I was actually standing up for myself. Dad looked like he was going to burst a blood vessel. Jason just sat there with that frown, probably pissed that his usual want, whine, get process was hitting a roadblock. I walked out before anyone could say anything else. Next morning, Dad tried again. He tried a different way this time. "Listen, son," he said, like we were negotiating a contract. "I understand you've put a lot of work into that car. What if we compensate you for it? We could put some money toward another project car for you, something you could work on while Jason takes the Mustang. He needs it now." I just laughed. "You don't get it, do you? It's not about the money. I don't want another project car. I want my car that I already rebuilt." And don't start again with the "it's just a car," because it's not. It means to me way more than that. Then he tried the "you're being selfish" again. Jason has an opportunity here. This could really set him up for success. Don't you want what's best for your brother? I was so tired of that line. What about what's best for me, Dad? Has that ever crossed your mind? Even once? The look on his face told me everything I needed to know. It genuinely hadn't. For the next couple weeks, things were tense at home. My mom tried the silent treatment, like I was the one being unreasonable. My dad kept making these little digs about team players and family sacrifice. Jason alternated between sulking and trying to butter me up with sudden brotherly interest in my life. I just kept my head down and focused on my classes and work. Spent as little time at home as possible. Started seriously looking into getting my own place, even though rent in our area was ridiculous. But I started planning. I figured they'd eventually get over it and buy Jason a car like normal parents would. A car they could afford. But nope, they just didn't want to. Because why spend money when they could take my car for free? Then after 1 week, I got a call from my aunt in Michigan. Grandpa Joe's health had taken a serious nosedive. The Parkinson's was getting worse, and during a routine checkup, doctors found some other issues they were concerned about. Heart stuff, apparently. I was panicking. Immediately planned to drive up to Michigan to see him. It was about a 6-hour drive, and I figured I'd stay for a long weekend. I told my parents I was going, even though we were barely speaking after the dinner fight. Mom just nodded and said to give Grandpa their love. Dad grunted something about me missing work. Classic. I was angry how he barely gave a crap about Grandpa. My buddy Dean, who always loved my grandpa's stories, knew about the trip. He got sad for him and offered to drive with me. Been wanting to visit this legendary man, he said. I thought about taking the Mustang, but Michigan roads in early spring are absolute hell. Potholes the size of kiddie pools from the winter freeze-thaw cycles. Didn't want to risk damage to the freshly restored undercarriage. Plus, Dean's truck had better heat, and Michigan was still freezing in April, so we took it instead. When we got to Michigan, my entire mood changed. Grandpa was in rough shape. Seeing this tough old Marine who used to carry me on his shoulders now barely able to hold a coffee cup, it really messed me up. His body was failing him, but his mind was still sharp as ever. "Took your sweet time getting here," he grumbled when we walked in, then winked to let me know he was kidding. We sat with him, and he started telling war stories and tales from the past, and Dean was eating it up. It was good to see Grandpa happy again, even if just for a bit. Dean had to head back after the first weekend for work, but I decided to stay longer. Grandpa's condition was worse than I'd expected, and I wanted to be there. I slept on a cot in his room at the assisted living place, helped him move, and made sure he ate properly. We had some good talks during those 2 weeks. He asked about the Mustang, of course. I showed him pictures of the finished restoration on my phone, and his eyes lit up. "Damn, boy, you did good. Real good job. I'm proud of you, kiddo." Then he asked about my parents and Jason. Saw right through my vague answers. "They giving you crap about that car, aren't they?" I nodded. Told him about Jason wanting it for college and the big fight. Grandpa just shook his head. "Your dad never did understand the value of working with your hands. Always wanted the easy way." Then he looked me dead in the eye. "Don't you give in, you hear me? That car is yours. You built it. You keep it." I promised him I would. After almost 2 weeks, Grandpa finally stabilized enough that I felt okay about heading home. The nurse had a good routine with him, and my aunt was checking in daily. I caught the Greyhound bus back. It was a long, uncomfortable ride, and I was exhausted by the time I got to our town's bus station. Called an Uber to take me home since nobody in my family bothered to offer a ride, even though I'd texted my ETA. When I pulled into our driveway, something felt off immediately. The Mustang wasn't in the garage where I'd left it. I figured maybe my dad had moved it to work on his own project car, so I checked the street parking, the side yard, everywhere. Nothing. I stormed inside and found my mom in the kitchen. "Where's my car?" I demanded. She jumped like she was surprised to see me, and immediately tried changing the subject. "Oh, you're back. How's your grandfather?" "Where's my Mustang?" I repeated, not letting her deflect. She wouldn't meet my eyes, suddenly very interested in the dish she was drawing. "Jason took it to campus. He needed a car for school, and since you were gone," my blood went cold. "He took my car to campus? After I said no to all of you? Are you serious?" Dad walked in then, and I could tell from his face he knew exactly what was happening. "Now listen," he started, using his courtroom voice. "We tried to call you, but reception was spotty up there." "Bullshit," I shot back. "I had a signal the whole time. I texted you guys every day with updates about Grandpa. You didn't call because you knew what I'd say." Dad went on. "Look, what's done is done. Jason needs that car more than you do right now. And what am I doing? Just existing? That's my car. I'm going to campus right now to get it." "That might be difficult," Dad said. "The title's been transferred. Legally, it's Jason's car now." For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. "You did what?" I swear. My brain took a screenshot. The way he said it was as if he was talking about the weather. It just makes more sense for him to have it right. "You transferred my title? How the hell did you do that without my signature? Why?" They exchanged this look that told me everything I needed to know. "Well, about that You forged my signature? Are you freaking kidding me? That's illegal. Don't be so dramatic, Mom snapped, finally dropping the sweet act. We're your parents. We were just making the right decision. I pulled out my phone and started dialing. Who are you calling? Mom asked, suddenly nervous. The police. Dad lunged forward and grabbed my phone. Don't be stupid. You'll regret it. I looked at them, already boiling. Yeah, someone's going to regret this. But it won't be me. I grabbed my phone back and walked out. Called Dean and he straight came to pick me up. Dude, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost. I told him everything. What the actual fuck was all Dean could say at first. I crashed on his couch that night, too angry to even think about going back home. Kept picturing Jason driving my car around campus, showing it off like he owned it, imagining my parents thinking they'd gotten away with it. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Dean's dad, Tom, came home late from work. Luckily, he's a lawyer. Dean told him what happened, and he sat down with us. He told me that what they did is definitely illegal. Grand theft auto, forgery, fraud, those are all felonies. But he told me that I need to think hard about whether I want to go down this road with my family because they might face real consequences. But guess what? I had zero fuck to give. Let them face whatever the hell was coming because they deserved it. That night, my phone was blowing up with texts from my parents. All variations of "come home so we can talk about this," and "you're overreacting," and "family comes first." I ignored all of them and slept, knowing I was about to give them some lessons. That's when Operation Takedown began the next day. First stop, the DMV. Most boring place on the planet, but man was it worth the 2-hour wait. I requested records of the title transfer for the Mustang. Sure enough, there it was. My signature on the transfer papers. Dated exactly when I was sitting in a hospital room in Michigan with Grandpa. Got copies of the original title too, showing the car was legally mine from when Grandpa signed it over. Next, I dug through all my files at home when my parents were at work. I'd always been meticulous about keeping records for the Mustang restoration. I had every receipt, every before and after photo, every piece of evidence showing it was my project from day one. Had the original bill of sale from Grandpa to me. Even had texts from my parents acknowledging it was my car project. Then Tom suggested we get proof I was actually in Michigan when the title transfer happened. This was the genius part. I went to my bank and got ATM camera footage showing me withdrawing cash from a Michigan ATM on the exact day the transfer papers were signed. I was literally 300 miles away from the DMV when my signature somehow appeared on those documents. While all this was happening, my phone was blowing up nonstop. My parents left these desperate voicemails, starting with anger. How dare you not answer our calls? Component placement moving to guilt. We're so worried about you. And finally settling on manipulation. If you love your brother, you'll come home and we can sort this out as a family. I didn't respond to any of it. I was done talking. This was way beyond the point where a family meeting could fix things. With all the evidence in hand, Tom and I went to the police station to file reports for grand theft auto, forgery, and fraud. Walking out of that police station was like I'd crossed some line that couldn't be uncrossed. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just taking whatever crap my family decided to dish out. I was fighting back. The wheels of justice turn slowly, but they do turn. It took almost 3 weeks for them to act on my complaint. 3 weeks of my parents escalating their attempts to contact me. The messages started getting desperate. Stop being dramatic and come back home immediately. And you're tearing the family apart for a crappy car. And my personal favorite, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. A molehill. They stole my car, forged my signature on legal documents, and threatened me when I called them on it. But sure, I was overreacting. I kept myself busy during those weeks. Picked up extra shifts at work. Helped Dean's dad around their house to thank them for letting me stay. Started looking for my own apartment, figuring it was finally time to get completely clear of my family's BS. Then, after almost 3 weeks of silence from the police, the detective called. We're moving on your case, he said. Officers are headed to your brother's dorm now to recover the vehicle. My heart was pounding as I hung up. It was actually happening. I'd been half convinced the cops would just shrug it off as a family matter. But when the cops showed up at Jason's dorm to recover the Mustang, it wasn't there. According to his roommate, Jason had taken it to a friend's house for safekeeping after getting worried texts from our parents. Because of course he had. That's when things got really serious. What had been a family dispute became a full-blown criminal investigation. The police tracked the car to a storage unit about an hour from campus. The unit was rented under a fake name, but they traced the payment back to my dad's credit card. And there, they found my Mustang under a tarp with the VIN plates already removed. The cops said it was clear evidence they were planning to either sell it illegally or make it disappear permanently. Taking off VIN plates is a felony in itself. The next day, Jason got arrested at his dorm for receiving stolen property and conspiracy. My parents were picked up at work and charged with forgery, fraud, and tampering with evidence. The local paper ran a story. Family charged in classic car theft scheme. There was even a picture of my parents being escorted into the courthouse for their arraignment. My phone basically exploded after that. Relatives I barely knew calling to ask what the hell was happening. High school friends texting to check if the rumors were true. And my parents, now truly desperate, calling hourly with tearful pleas to drop the charges. In their wildest fucking dreams. This will ruin Jason's future, Mom sobbed in one voicemail. He could go to jail. Is that what you want for your brother? Another from Dad. You are a total jerk. The legal fees are draining our savings. We might lose the house. I didn't call back. Not once. They'd made their choice when they decided stealing from me was okay. Now they were sucking it up. My extended family was split. Some were horrified at what my parents had done, like my aunt in Michigan. Others took my parents' side, of course. My mom's sister left me this scathing voicemail about how I was destroying the family over a stupid car. I didn't reply. What was the point? Through all this chaos, I was calm. Like I'd finally reached the point where nothing they could say or do would affect me anymore. I'd spent my whole life being the good kid, the reasonable one, the one who sucked it up and dealt with whatever unfairness came my way. And where had that gotten me? Nowhere. The most surprising call came from Jason, from the county jail. Unlike his usual confident tone, he sounded desperate. He started with some BS about it all being a misunderstanding, and claimed he thought I was cool with him having the car because our parents said so. I cut him off right there and told him to stop lying. He knew exactly what he was doing since I'd told him to his face at that dinner that he was never getting my car. After a pause, he admitted. Said he figured I wouldn't press charges because family sticks together, or some crap like that. He said my dad claimed it wasn't a big deal since they're my parents, and that the car was wasted on me anyway, since I just worked on it instead of actually driving it somewhere worthwhile. Pure entitled BS, but exactly what I dealt with my whole life. Then he had the nerve to beg me to drop the charges because this was going to mess up his life. I just laughed and welcomed him to the world of consequences, then hung up. As the case moved forward, I got regular updates from the detective. The evidence was overwhelming, he said. Between the forged signature, the ATM footage proving I was out of state, and the fact they'd removed the VIN plates, the prosecutor was confident they had a solid case. Your parents' attorney has reached out about a plea deal, the detective told me. They want to make this go away. I bet they did. But this wasn't going away. Not this time. Edit 1. God, I didn't expect this to get so much attention. Thank you all. Edit 2. For those asking for an update, I will update you soon about everything. Things are quite messy now, so excuse me until I'm free. Saya around. Update. Hey Reddit, it's been about almost a year since my original post blew up, and a lot of you have been messaging me for an update. And let me tell you, there's a lot of things to tell, so buckle up. So the legal system worked slow as hell, but it gets there eventually. Over the next few months, I watched from a distance as my family's perfect image completely fell apart. Turned out the prosecutor wasn't interested in any plea deals. Jason ended up with a felony conviction for grand theft auto and tampering with evidence. Got sentenced to 8 months in county jail, 3 years probation, and 500 hours of community service. State University expelled him immediately when the conviction came down. No appeals, no second chances. My parents didn't fare much better. Dad got hit with forgery, fraud, conspiracy, and tampering with evidence. Mom got the same charges since they proved she was the one who actually forged my signature. They both got 18 months probation, massive fines, and 30 days in county jail, which the judge wouldn't let them serve on weekends like they begged to. Dad lost his accounting job. Turns out firms don't like keeping convicted fraudsters around to handle money. Their perfect reputation? Completely destroyed. On top of the criminal charges, the civil suit I filed with Tom's help hit them where it hurt. They had to sell their house to cover legal fees and damages. Last I heard, they're living in some crappy apartment and barely making ends meet. They tried to declare bankruptcy to escape the civil judgment, but the court denied. Through their court-appointed lawyer, they made one last attempt to reach out, offered to take a second mortgage on the house they were already selling, to pay for the car and then some if I'd just dropped the charges. Said we were still a family and could get past this. I sent back one line through Tom. We stopped being a family when you chose Jason over me for the last time. The Mustang was eventually recovered from the storage unit. The court ordered it returned to me with damages for the attempted theft and emotional distress. It came back with a dent in the fender and some scratches, but nothing I couldn't fix. While all this legal stuff was happening, I'd been staying with Dean and his family, but I knew I needed a more permanent solution. I didn't just want to move out. I wanted to get away from that toxic environment completely. So I made a decision. I packed up everything I owned, which wasn't much. Amazing how little you need when you start fresh. Quit my job and moved to Michigan to live with Grandpa Joe. His Parkinson's wasn't getting better, and he needed someone around more consistently than my aunt could manage with her job and kids. It was honestly the best decision I've ever made. I transferred my community college credits to a school nearby and picked up a part-time job at a local auto restoration shop where they actually appreciated my skills. The first weekend after I got settled, I drove the Mustang up to see Grandpa. He looked really tired. The sight of him broke my heart. I helped him out to the parking lot so he could see the car properly in the sunlight. He ran his trembling hand along the fender. The smile on his face was precious. He was so happy I moved in with him. Living with Grandpa those few months was the best thing that could have happened for both of us. I'd help him with everything and even cook his meals while he'd sit at the kitchen table, giving me advice about compression ratios and valve timing. We'd watch old westerns together in the evening, him falling asleep halfway through but insisting I tell him how they ended anyway. My parents tried to visit a few times after Grandpa took a bad turn. He refused to see them. He said he didn't want to see those two hypocrites. Grandpa passed away about 6 months after I moved into his house. Went peacefully in his sleep. I was with him that last night, telling him about this '69 Charger the shop had just taken in for restoration. I grieved him. Still I do. At the funeral, my family showed up. Jason looked like hell after his stint in county jail. My parents just looked beaten down and old. I kept my distance, even when they tried to talk. Didn't trust myself to say anything that wouldn't turn into a scene. And Grandpa deserved better than that on his final day. After the service, I was shocked to learn that Grandpa had left me everything. His house, his tools, his modest savings. My dad looked like he'd been slapped when the lawyer read the will. Guess he'd been counting on an inheritance to help with their financial problems from the legal mess. The lawyer handed me an envelope afterward, a letter from Grandpa. The letter began with, "To my real son." He wrote that the last months with me. He even asked me to keep the Mustang running smooth. I couldn't help. I cried my eyes out when I read it. I still keep that letter in the glove box of the Mustang. Now I'm still in Michigan, living in Grandpa's house. Got some solid friends, a job I love, and a future that looks pretty bright. Every Sunday when the weather's good, I take the Mustang for a long drive down the coastal roads by the lake. We drive on. As for my family, they contacted me many times begging for help. I blocked them every time and told them to go to hell. That door is closed and locked. Edit 1. Guys, thanks for all the awards and support. I appreciate your kind words a lot. Edit 2. For those asking if I'll update you guys again, I think I'm going off for a while. I really need to take a long break and just focus on my life. So peace out for now, TC fam. Story 2. My fiancée dumped me for a better man her family chose. She threw the ring at me. You're pathetic, keep your cheap ring. 2 years later, she's losing it after seeing me happy with my successful business and my soulmate. Hey everyone, before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Sup, Reddit. My fiancé left me after 4 years together, called me pathetic with delusional dreams, and got with her new guy the same day we broke up. 2 years later, my dreams came true, and I was thriving. The best part? I destroyed her new boyfriend's career. She lost it. Here's what went down. I, 29 male, met my ex-fiancée, 26 female Brooke, in the most ridiculous way possible. I'm sitting in the library at 2 a.m., dead-eyed from coding for 12 hours straight, when this girl with perfectly styled hair and a coffee cup trips and spills her latte all over my laptop. Most people would have lost their minds, but I just looked at her and said, well, at least now my code has some flavor. She laughed instead of running away. 4 years together, engaged for the last 8 months. 4 years of thinking we had something real. I'd proposed with a ring I'd saved up for 6 months to buy. She said yes, cried happy tears, posted pictures on social media with captions about forever. And she'd come over to my 3rd floor walk-up apartment. My place was maybe 600 square feet. The building had character, which is real estate speak for everything's broken and the landlord doesn't care. But Brooke seemed to love it. We decorated with string lights from Target and posters I'd collected over the years. Then there was my cat Python. Of course, I named him that. My rescued tabby who had this annoying habit of knocking everything off every surface. But every night, without fail, he'd curl up between us on the bed. Brooke always claimed she was more of a dog person, but I'd catch her having full conversations with Python when she thought I wasn't around. Brooke's family, her parents never said they hated me outright. Instead, I got the death by 1,000 paper cuts treatment. Her mother would always give me that dismissive look. Her father had this way of asking about my little computer project, with the same tone you'd use to ask a kid about their imaginary friend. Real supportive energy there. Family dinners were like performance art, where I was both the audience and the punchline. But here's the thing. Back then, Brooke seemed different. She'd roll her eyes at their country club drama and make jokes about how stuffy they were. We'd be eating Chinese takeout on my futon, watching Netflix on my laptop that took 5 minutes to buffer anything, and she'd tell me none of the money stuff mattered. Turns out that was complete garbage. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The first real crack in our relationship happened about 6 months before the end. Brooke's college roommate was getting married. I saved up for months to rent a decent tux and buy a wedding gift. Being engaged ourselves, I thought this would be fun. A preview of our own future wedding. When we got to the reception, it was like stepping into a different world. Ice sculptures, live orchestra, champagne that probably cost more per bottle than my monthly grocery budget. Everyone looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine, and I felt like I'd wandered onto the wrong movie set. Brooke fit right in, of course. She was in her element, chatting with old classmates about their jobs at investment banks and consulting firms, their new apartments in trendy neighborhoods, their expensive vacation plans. Meanwhile, I'm standing there nursing a single drink, trying to make conversation with people who kept asking what I do, and then losing interest the moment I mentioned startups. Brooke had specifically requested not to sit with her college friends because they can be a bit much, but somehow we ended up at a table full of her parents' friends instead. Older couples with serious money who spent the entire dinner talking about their stock portfolios and real estate investments. When they asked about my work, I tried to explain my startup in terms they'd understand. Big mistake. One guy literally laughed and said, "Still playing with computers, huh? When are you going to get a real job? Especially now that you're getting married. Time to grow up." And here's the part that stung. Brooke didn't defend me. She just looked embarrassed and changed the subject to the bride's dress. Later, when I brought it up in the car, she said I was being too sensitive and that I should have just played along better. The second incident happened a few weeks later when her mother invited me for coffee without Brooke, just the two of us. We met at this upscale cafe in her neighborhood, the kind of place where a basic latte costs $8 and everyone looks like they're conducting important business meetings. She showed up 15 minutes late wearing designer everything and didn't apologize, just launched straight into her agenda. "I've been thinking about your situation," she said, like my life was a problem she needed to solve. "And I have some connections who might be able to help you find something more stable." She pulled out a folder full of job listings she'd printed out. Entry-level positions at banks, insurance companies, corporate office jobs, the kind of soul-crushing 9-to-5 work that would have killed everything I was passionate about. "These are real careers," she explained, sliding the papers across the table. "With benefits, retirement plans, growth potential. You could start at the bottom and work your way up like Brody did." I stared at the papers, genuinely speechless. "You want me to give up my startup to become, what, a claims adjuster?" She looked at me like I was a child refusing to eat vegetables. "I want you to be realistic about your future, about Brooke's future. She deserves security, not fairy tales." The conversation went downhill from there. She kept using phrases like, "when you're ready to grow up," and "Brooke needs a provider, not a dreamer." She never raised her voice, never lost her composure, but every word was designed to make me feel small and inadequate. The worst part? When I told Brooke about it later, she didn't seem surprised or upset that her mother had ambushed me. She just said, "She means well. Maybe you should at least look at those jobs, just as a backup plan." That's when I knew the poison was already spreading. The beginning of the end started with what Brooke called just a casual family dinner. She asked me to wear a blazer. When I showed up to their estate, and yeah, it's big enough to call an estate, I realized this wasn't going to be the intimate family gathering Brooke had described. The driveway looked like a luxury car dealership. BMWs, Mercedes, a couple of Audis. My 2008 Honda Civic with the dent in the bumper and the check engine light that had been on since Obama was president looked like it had wandered into the wrong neighborhood. The real kicker? This wasn't just family. Brooke's dad had invited his business associates and their sons. Guys who looked like they'd stepped out of a LinkedIn success story. Ivy League educations, summer internships at Goldman Sachs, fathers who play golf with senators. The kind of people who use summer as a verb. The conversation flowed like they were all reading from the same script. Investment strategies, European vacations, property portfolios. Meanwhile, I'm over here with my most exciting recent purchase being name brand cereal instead of the store brand. Real thrilling stuff. Then came the targeted questions, delivered with surgical precision. So you're still working on that little tech project? Brooke's father asked. It's a startup, I corrected, trying not to sound defensive. We're in early development, but we're making solid progress. I didn't mention that our last investor meeting had been a disaster, or that my co-founder Jake and I had been pulling 80-hour weeks trying to fix a bug in our prototype that was making it crash every time someone tried to upload a file larger than 50 megabytes. Technical difficulties aside, we were broke and running on fumes. One of his friends, this guy with perfect teeth and a February tan that screamed, "I winter in Florida," chuckled like I'd just told him the earth was flat. Tech is so volatile these days. You sure it's a wise investment of time? Maybe a backup plan wouldn't hurt? The condescension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. And here's the part that really stung. Brooke didn't say a word in my defense. Usually she'd jump in with something about how passionate I was, or how she believed in what we were building. This time, nothing. Then they brought out Brody. Brooke's mother introduced him like he was the second coming. Brody just made junior partner at a top corporate law firm. Princeton undergraduate, Yale Law. Such a brilliant mind. Brody was everything I wasn't. Tall, perfectly groomed, the kind of guy who probably had his suits tailored and never had to check his bank balance before buying coffee. He talked about his recent bonus like it was casual conversation. The condo he just bought in the right part of town. His 5-year plan to make full partner. And Brooke? She was eating it up, asking questions about his work, laughing at his mediocre jokes, showing more interest in his career than she'd ever shown in mine. Every question she asked him felt like a small betrayal. I barely said 10 words the entire night. Every time I tried to contribute to the conversation, someone would politely listen for about 5 seconds before steering things back to Brody's accomplishments or someone else's success story. I was watching Brooke transform into someone I didn't recognize. The girl who used to make fun of pretentious people was suddenly one of them. When we got back to my apartment that night, something had shifted. She complained about the broken elevator that had been out of order for months. She wrinkled her nose when Python jumped on the bed, something that had never bothered her before. She mentioned how small the bathroom was, like she was seeing the place for the first time. That's when I knew it was over. I just didn't know she was going to make it official so soon. A week later, Brooke showed up at my place after work, still wearing her business casual outfit from her marketing job at her dad's friend's company. A job she got without an interview, but that's a whole other story about how connections work when you have the right last name. She sat across from me at my tiny IKEA dining table. The same table where we'd had countless takeout dinners, game nights with friends, and late-night conversations about our future together. But this wasn't going to be one of those conversations. "We need to talk," she said, and I could tell she'd been rehearsing this. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she continued, not meeting my eyes. "About us. About my future. About what I need." I knew where this was heading, but I let her talk. "I love you, but I need stability. I can't keep waiting for you to figure it out. My family made me realize I need someone who's already there. Someone who can provide the life I deserve. Someone like Brody," I said flatly. She didn't even have the decency to look surprised that I'd connected the dots. Yes, someone like Brody. And then her mask slipped. "Look, I tried to make this work," she said, gesturing around my cramped apartment like it was evidence of some moral failing. "I really did, but I can't pretend anymore that this is the life I want. Living in some rundown building, worrying about money, dating someone who can't even afford to take me somewhere nice. This was the same person who used to say she loved our cozy nights in, who claimed she didn't care about fancy restaurants or expensive things. You're 29 years old and you're still playing with computers in your bedroom like you're 19, she continued, her voice getting sharper. Brody owns a condo downtown. He takes me to restaurants where people recognize him. He doesn't have to save up for months just to buy a decent ring. That last part hit like a physical blow. I'd worked double shifts for 6 months to afford her engagement ring. It wasn't huge, but it was real, and I'd been proud of it. Wow, I didn't know that's what you thought about it. 4 years and you're telling me this now, Brooke? Why waste all that time? She continued. I gave you 4 years to get your act together, to become someone worth staying with. But you're still the same broke dreamer I met in college, except now you're older, and it's just pathetic. After some back and forth, the argument escalated, and she did something I'll never forget. She yanked the engagement ring off her finger and threw it at me. It bounced off my chest and clattered onto the floor. Here, take your cheap ring back, she said with disgust. Brody's already talking about getting me a real one. From Tiffany's, not some discount jewelry store. I stared at the ring on the floor. The ring I'd saved up for. The ring she'd cried happy tears over just months ago. The ring that represented everything I'd hoped we'd build together. You know what's pathetic? I said, standing up. Pretending to love someone for 4 years while secretly keeping score. Pretending to be someone you're not because you're too much of a coward to own your shallowness from the start. Her face flushed red. At least I'm not wasting my life chasing some impossible dream that's never going to happen. You're right, I said, picking up the ring from the floor. You're not wasting your life. You're just wasting mine. She grabbed her purse, suddenly eager to leave now that she'd said her piece. Brody is picking me up at 8. The final twist of the knife. She wanted me to know she was going straight from ending our engagement to a date with her upgrade. Good for you, I said, opening the door for her. I hope you're very happy together. 2 days later, 2 days, she was Instagram official with Brody. Not even a week after ending our engagement, there they were in matching outfits at some luxury resort in the Hamptons. His arm around her waist, her smile wide and carefree. Caption, found my forever. Meanwhile, I was still sleeping on the side of the bed we used to share, still finding her hair elastic bands in random places, still had half her stuff in my apartment because she hadn't found time to pick it up yet. The engagement ring sat on my dresser, a daily reminder of how stupid I'd been to believe in forever. I wish I could say I channeled my heartbreak into immediate success, that I became some tech mogul overnight through sheer force of will. But that's movie nonsense. Real life is messier. I spiraled. Hard. My startup crashed exactly 1 month after our breakup. Our investors pulled out after our prototype failed spectacularly during what was supposed to be our big demo. The app crashed 3 times in the first 5 minutes, and when it finally worked, it ran so slowly that everyone in the room started checking their phones. Jake, my co-founder, took a job at Microsoft 2 weeks later. Can't blame him. He had student loans and a girlfriend who actually supported his career. I was suddenly alone with a failed company, a lease I couldn't afford, and savings that were disappearing faster than free food at a college event. I had to give up the apartment, but my friend Kai saved my ass. This guy I'd known since freshman year who never quite understood what I saw in Brooke, but supported me anyway. His place was even smaller than mine, a 1-bedroom where the living room doubled as his office. But he cleared out half his closet without me even asking, and let me and Python crash in his spare room. Kai's reaction when I showed up at his door with my life in garbage bags? Dude, I always knew she was high maintenance, but damn, she really said your ring was cheap. That thing cost more than my car. Then after a pause, well, my car's a piece of shit, but still. That's a real friend right there. Meanwhile, Brooke's perfect new life was playing out like a highlight reel on social media. Vacations to places I'd only seen in movies. Dinners at restaurants where the menu doesn't have prices. Every post felt personal. Like she was saying, see? This is what I deserve. This is what you never could have given me. The absolute lowest point came when I ran into Brooke and Brody at a cafe downtown. I was there picking up an Uber Eats order because that's what my life had become. My car's AC had been broken for 3 months. I couldn't afford to fix it, so I was driving around in 90-degree heat with the windows down, sweating through whatever clean shirt I had left. My phone was at 15% battery after a 10-hour shift, and I still had 4 more deliveries to make if I wanted to hit my daily goal. There they were, sitting outside like they'd stepped out of a lifestyle magazine. Brooke had this new haircut, one of those expensive styles that looks effortless, but probably took 2 hours and cost more than I made in a week. Brody was wearing sunglasses that I'm pretty sure cost more than everything I was wearing combined. They were laughing about something, holding hands across the table, looking like the poster couple for living your best life. Then Brody saw me first. Well, well, he said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. Look who it is. Still delivering food, I see. His smirk was pure malice. This wasn't accidental recognition. He was enjoying this. Brooke looked up and saw me standing there in my wrinkled Uber Eats shirt, holding a bag of food that cost more than I'd spent on groceries all week. For a split second, I thought I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt, maybe? But then she smiled. Actually smiled. The condescension was suffocating. I grabbed the bag and walked away without another word. But I heard Brody say, just loud enough for me to catch, "Dodged a bullet there, didn't we?" And Brooks laugh in response. That moment broke something in me. Standing there in the summer heat, sweating through my uniform, listening to my ex-fiancée and her new boyfriend mock my failures. That was the last day I allowed myself to be a joke. I went home to Kai's apartment that night, deleted every social media app from my phone, and told him what happened. His response? Bro, that guy sounds like the kind of person who thinks mayo is spicy. And she laughed? Nah, man. Time to show these trust fund babies how the real world works. I cut everything out. Social media, distractions, self-pity, negative people. I went into full rebuild mode like my life depended on it. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. 4 hours a night if I was lucky. Days were for Uber Eats, evenings were for my night shift stocking shelves at the grocery store, and any spare moment was spent rebuilding my startup from scratch. But this time was different. I got smart about it. No more chasing investors with half-baked ideas and flashy presentations. I learned to bootstrap, to build something real before asking for anyone's money. No more trusting people easily. I kept my circle small. Just Kai and a couple other ride-or-die friends who'd proven themselves when things got ugly. Kai was incredible through all of this. He'd bring me coffee during my late-night coding sessions, make sure I ate something besides protein bars, and never once complained about me turning his living room into a disaster zone. He even helped me land my first few enterprise clients through connections at his job. Didn't ask for anything in return, just wanted to see me succeed. For 2 years, I completely disappeared from Brooke's world. Had no idea what she was doing, who she was with, whether she was happy. And honestly, I stopped caring. While she was playing house with Brody, I was grinding harder than I'd ever worked in my life. My new startup idea came from my previous failure. Instead of trying to create some revolutionary consumer app that would change the world, I pivoted to B2B software. Specifically, AI-powered contract analysis for law firms. Kai's take on this pivot. So you're basically building software to replace lawyers? Dude, you're going to save the world and get revenge at the same time. That's some next-level supervillain stuff right there. It was boring, unglamorous work that nobody posts about on social media. But it solved a real problem I'd experienced firsthand when trying to navigate legal documents during my first startup. Small law firms were drowning in paperwork, spending hours on tasks that could be automated. Our software could analyze contracts, spot potential issues, and flag important clauses in seconds instead of hours. And more importantly, people were willing to pay for it. Then everything changed. It started small. A mention in an industry publication, a testimonial from a satisfied client that opened doors. Word spread in legal circles that there was this new tool that could do the work of junior associates at a fraction of the cost. Suddenly, I wasn't chasing clients anymore. They were calling me. My team was incredible. People who believed in the vision, who worked just as hard as I did, who became like family. Jake actually reached out during this phase, wanting to come back. Said Microsoft was fine, but he missed the startup energy. I told him we were good, not out of spite, but because the team I had now was solid. Within months, we were scaling fast, really fast. We landed a contract with one of the top 5 law firms in the country, which led to more contracts, more recognition, more investors wanting in. The company that had started in Kai's living room was suddenly opening offices in London and Singapore. We were expanding globally, disrupting an industry that had operated the same way for decades. But here's the beautiful irony. Our biggest market disruption was in corporate law, specifically financial services law, the exact area where Brody worked. Our AI tools were making junior associates obsolete, automating the grunt work that guys like Brody had built their early careers on. When I realized this connection, Kai nearly choked on his coffee laughing. Wait. You're telling me that your company is literally putting trust fund lawyers out of business? And Captain America wannabe has no idea? The first time I saw Brooke again was at an industry conference. Not as a guest this time, but as a featured speaker. A year earlier, I couldn't have afforded the entry ticket. Now I was on the main stage, talking about how AI was reshaping legal services to an audience of executives and investors. After my talk, shaking hands with people who wanted to do business, I spotted Brooke's parents across the room. The change in their demeanor was immediate and obvious. Her mother's glass froze halfway to her lips. Her father, who had once mocked my little computer project at his dinner table, gave me a slow, respectful nod. Then I saw Brooke. She was standing off to the side, frozen, staring at me like she'd seen a ghost. She looked good, but different. The carefree confidence from her Instagram posts was nowhere to be seen. She looked smaller somehow. We didn't approach each other. We didn't speak. But I saw the exact moment the realization hit her. The moment she understood that the pathetic guy she'd left behind was now more successful than anyone in her family's social circle. Kai's text when I told him about seeing her, did she look like she just realized she fumbled the bag? Please tell me she looked like she just realized she fumbled the bag. From that night on, everything accelerated. Word travels fast in certain circles, especially when someone goes from zero to hero in a couple of years. Within weeks of that conference, I started getting invitations to events I'd never heard of. Brooke's father personally reached out to invite me to one of these events. I accepted, not because I wanted their approval, but because I knew exactly what this was about. They wanted to be associated with my success. When I arrived at the event, fashionably late because why not, I immediately spotted Brooke and Brody. Brody looked different, stressed. His shoulders were tense. He kept checking his phone, and he had this haunted look that comes from knowing your world is falling apart but not being able to stop it. His firm had been hemorrhaging clients to companies like mine. Traditional law firms were struggling to compete with AI-powered efficiency, and the old guard was panicking. They were trying to adapt but failing, losing business to younger, more innovative companies that could deliver better results faster and cheaper. Brody probably still didn't know I was behind his problems, but he was definitely feeling the pressure. Meanwhile, Brooke knew exactly who I was. When our eyes met across the room, I saw the same expression from the conference, but worse. Pure, undeniable regret. A week after the event, she reached out. I had deleted her number years ago, but her message still came through. Hey, it's been a while. I was wondering if we could catch up sometime. Just talk. I ignored it. Then she made a desperate move. She showed up at my office. My team had left for the day, and I was finishing up some emails when the security guard called up. There's a woman here asking to see you. Says it's important. I didn't need him to describe her. I debated having security escort her out, but then I realized this was my moment. The moment I'd been unconsciously preparing for since the day she walked out of my life. So I let her up. She walked into my corner office hesitantly, looking around at the modern furniture, the awards on the wall. So different from the cramped apartment we'd once shared. Her confidence was completely gone. The dismissive attitude had been replaced by something I'd never seen from her before. Genuine nervousness. Hey, she said softly, giving me a sad smile. It's been a while. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed, and said nothing. Just watched her fidget under my gaze. She took a deep breath. I was wrong. About everything. I listened to my family and threw away something real. She bit her lip, searching my face for any reaction. I miss you. I miss us. Us? She nodded quickly, hope flickering in her eyes. I know I hurt you, but maybe we could start over. Try again. I stared at her for a long moment, then laughed. Not angrily, not bitterly, just genuinely amused. Start over? I repeated, shaking my head. We ended the day you chose them over me. She winced, but I wasn't done. You didn't want me when I was broke. You didn't believe in me when I was struggling. You called me pathetic and left me for someone with a better bank account. But now that I've made it, now you want back in? Her face fell as the words hit home. I stood up, buttoning my tailored suit jacket. Brooke, I don't think about you. I don't miss you. And I sure as hell don't need you. That's when the office door opened and my girlfriend walked in. Chloe, a brilliant product designer I'd met at a tech conference who had believed in our company when we were still working out of Kai's apartment. A gorgeous, intelligent woman who made Brooke look like a shallow Instagram influencer by comparison. Brooke's face went white. I turned to Chloe, giving her a warm smile before looking back at Brooke. You see, I did find someone in my league. Turns out it just wasn't you. I walked Brooke to the elevator and watched the doors close between us. It should have felt like victory, but honestly, it just felt like closing a book I'd finished reading years ago. But that wasn't the end. That was just the opening move of the endgame. A few weeks later, word started spreading through legal circles that Brody's firm was in serious trouble. My company's AI-powered tools had been systematically replacing traditional legal services at an alarming rate. We were faster, cheaper, more accurate, and more efficient. We could do in minutes what they charged clients hundreds of dollars per hour to complete. Brody's firm was bleeding money trying to compete with technology they didn't understand and couldn't match. Instead of adapting, the old guard partners were panicking, making desperate moves, and losing more clients in the process. I heard through industry contacts that Brody was having a complete breakdown behind closed doors, working 90-plus-hour weeks, screaming at junior associates, desperately trying to retain their biggest clients. Kai's take. So the guy who mocked you for playing with computers is now getting destroyed by computers. Investors were pulling funding, seeing the firm as an outdated dinosaur in a market they no longer understood. And the best part? Brody still hadn't figured out that I was the one behind his career meltdown. While Brody was crumbling professionally, Brooke's parents were going into full damage control mode. They had spent years treating me like some broke loser who wasn't worthy of their daughter. The desperate attempts to reconnect started immediately. Brooke's mother sent polite emails congratulating me on my success. Her father mentioned me in interviews, calling me one of the most promising entrepreneurs of the decade. They invited me to business events, framing them as networking opportunities. I ignored all of it. Then her father called me directly. I answered out of pure curiosity. I think we should talk, son, he said, his tone warm. About business opportunities, potential partnerships, water under the bridge, you know? I let him ramble about synergies and collaborations for a few minutes before he got to the real point. Listen, Brooke made a mistake. I know that. We all know that. But she's been having a rough time lately, and I think if you two just sat down and… I hung up mid-sentence. There was no apology, no accountability, just pure self-serving damage control. That was the last time I ever took their calls. The moment Brody finally realized who was behind his downfall was absolutely perfect. I was speaking at another industry conference, this time on a panel about the future of AI and law. The CEO of a major firm publicly praised my company, saying, honestly, these guys are changing the game. Some of the biggest traditional firms are struggling to keep up. The camera panned to the audience, and there was Brody, his face completely drained of color, his expression a mix of shock and dawning horror. You could see the exact moment it clicked. I wasn't just his ex-girlfriend's loser ex-boyfriend. I was the man systematically destroying his career. That night, he snapped. I got a text from a mutual contact. Bro, Brody just lost his shit in a partner meeting. You need to hear this. Apparently, during a firm-wide strategy session, one of the senior partners brought up my company as an example of what they needed to compete with. Brody completely lost it. Started screaming about how I was just a lucky fraud, how my company would crash and burn, how traditional law would always win in the end. The problem? They were staring at him like he'd lost his mind, realizing that Brody wasn't the future of their firm. I was the future, and he was the past. But I had one final move to make. A few months later, my company was ready for its biggest acquisition yet. We were buying out a smaller but highly influential legal firm that happened to be a direct competitor to Brody's company. This wasn't just business. This was checkmate. Once the deal was finalized, we immediately poached several of Brody's biggest clients. Within 6 months, his firm was forced to merge with a larger competitor just to survive. Brody went from junior partner to just another employee, probably doing the same grunt work he'd smugly bragged about escaping years earlier. The golden boy who had everything handed to him was now just another lawyer struggling to stay relevant in an industry that had passed him by. But it wasn't over yet. Brooke decided to do one final desperate attempt. 3 weeks after Brody's firm officially merged, Brooke showed up at my office again, but this time was different. This wasn't the nervous, hopeful woman from before. This was desperation in its purest form. It was a Friday evening around 7 p.m. Most of my team had left for happy hour, but I was staying late to finish some contracts. The security guard called up, sounding uncertain. Sir, there's a woman here. She's pretty upset. Says she needs to see you urgently. Let her up, I said. I had a feeling I knew who it was. When the elevator doors opened, I barely recognized her. Gone was the polished, put-together woman I'd known. Her hair was a mess. Her makeup smudged like she'd been crying. She was wearing jeans and a wrinkled sweater. I'd never seen her in anything that casual, even back when we were together. Thank God you're here, she said, rushing into my office without being invited. I've been calling, texting. Why won't you answer me? I stayed seated behind my desk, calm. Because we have nothing to talk about, Brooke. Yes, we do, she practically shouted. I left him. I left Brody. It's over. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. His firm collapsed. He lost everything. And all he did was blame me. Said it was my fault for leaving you. That I'd ruined both our lives. She started pacing frantically. So I'm done. I'm done with all of it. Good for you, I said flatly. She stopped pacing and stared at me. Don't you get it? I'm free now. We can be together again. We can start over. I almost laughed. Start over? I made a mistake, she said, her voice getting higher and more desperate. The biggest mistake of my life. I should never have left you. You were right about everything. My family, Brody, all of it. But I'm here now, and I'm choosing you. She moved closer to my desk, her eyes wild with desperation. I know you still love me. What we had was real. Real love doesn't just disappear. You're right, I said, standing up. Real love doesn't disappear. But what we had wasn't real love. Her face crumpled. That's not true. You left me the moment something better came along. That's not love. That's convenience. I was confused. My family pressured me. I was young and stupid. You were 26, Brooke. You weren't a child. She started crying then. Ugly sobbing. Please, I'm begging you. I have nothing left. My parents won't even take my calls anymore. You're all I have. I'm not your anything, I said coldly. I'm also with someone else. You need to move on. She grabbed my arm, her grip desperate. I was wrong about the ring. It was beautiful. I was just scared. I pulled my arm away. Don't. But she couldn't stop. I'll do anything. I'll work. I'll change everything about myself. Just please take me back. I love you. I've always loved you. No, Brooke. You need to leave. No! She screamed. You don't understand. I made one mistake. One. You can't punish me forever. Then I called security. What are you doing? Calling security. She lunged for the phone, trying to stop me. Don't you dare! You can't just throw me out. I easily moved the phone out of her reach and dialed. Security? I need someone to escort a visitor out of my office. You bastard! She screamed. I loved you. I gave you the best years of my life. Tony, the security guard arrived. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me. No, you don't understand, she shouted at Tony, then spun back to me. I'm offering you everything. My whole life. How can you just throw that away? I looked at her and said nothing. Then Tony guided her toward the elevator while she was still yelling and crying. That bitch is with you only for money. When you're old and alone and she takes everything from you, you'll remember that I was the one who really loved you. The elevator doors closed and she was gone. I stood there for a moment in the silence of my office, then texted Kai. Just had Brooke escorted out by security. She completely lost it. In the end, I didn't need to destroy Brooke's life. She did that herself by trading real love for status symbols. When that status disappeared, she was left with nothing, not even her dignity. His reply was immediate. Bro, please tell me someone got video. That sounds like prime YouTube content right there. Entitled Ex-Fiancé Has Epic Meltdown at Tech Office would get millions of views. I couldn't help but laugh. Even in the aftermath of that insanity, Kai knew exactly how to put things in perspective. In the end, I didn't need to destroy Brooke's life. She did that herself by trading real love for status symbols. When that status disappeared, she was left with nothing, not even her dignity. The best revenge wasn't destroying their lives. It was simply living mine better without them. Story 3. My fiancé left me a note on my birthday that said I found someone better. I didn't say a word, just left them, made my move, and now they are begging. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hey Reddit. So this happened 6 months ago. I was getting married in a few months. Funny how fast life can flip. 1 minute you're picking out a venue, the next you're plotting revenge. Buckle up. This one's a little ugly. I, 36 male, work as a civil engineer at a mid-sized firm, and until recently was engaged to Andrea, 31 female. We'd been together for 4 years, lived in my house for 3 of those. I bought the place after my dad passed away, and left me enough for a decent down payment on a 3-bedroom in a solid neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but the mortgage is manageable, and the yard is big enough for the dog I always wanted but never got, because Andrea claimed she was allergic. I grew up in a blue-collar family. Dad was a plumber, Mom was a school secretary. They worked hard to put me through engineering school. Dad always drove an '89 Chevy Silverado that he maintained himself. Taught me how to change the oil when I was 12. I still drive my 2010 Tacoma that I bought used with 80,000 miles. Andrea always complained it was too old and not professional enough for client meetings, but I refused to go into debt for a status symbol. When Dad died from a heart attack 5 years ago, I promised myself I'd make something of the opportunity he'd given me. Got the job, got the house, met Andrea at a friend's wedding, and thought I was set. Andrea works in pharmaceutical sales, pulls in around $85,000 plus commission. Between us, we were doing well. Not rich, but comfortable. We had the wedding planned for next summer, already put down $4,000 in deposits. Her parents were covering most of it, but we were contributing what we could. There were signs things weren't right, like when I got that promotion last year and took her out to celebrate. Instead of congratulating me, she spent the whole dinner asking if I'd be getting a company car or an expense account. When I said no, she just said, "Oh," and changed the subject. Or the time I came home with groceries, and she completely lost it, because I'd bought store-brand cereal instead of the organic stuff she wanted. Turned into an hour-long argument about how I never listen and don't care about her health, over cereal. Things started changing about 6 months ago. Andrea's client dinners became more frequent. She'd come home late smelling like cologne, claiming it was from hugging clients goodbye. I'd find receipts for restaurants I knew we couldn't afford on a regular basis. When I'd bring it up, she'd get defensive, saying I was being controlling about her money. Then there's Joseph, my buddy since college. He works IT at the hospital, where Andrea has a lot of clients. He started acting weird around me, canceling our weekly basketball games, avoiding eye contact when we did hang out. Should have seen the signs. My birthday rolled around last month. I took the day off, planning to relax at home with my cat Max. I'd adopted him from a shelter 3 years ago, a one-eyed orange tabby that Andrea tolerated but never liked. Max had been faithfully following me around the house since the day I brought him home. That morning, while I was making coffee, Andrea made this big show of giving me a wrapped box. "Don't open it until tonight," she said, kissing my cheek quickly. "I've got a dinner meeting with the regional director, but I'll be home by 10 and we'll celebrate." I nodded, set it aside. Another dinner meeting. Whatever. Around 8 p.m., I was sitting on the couch, Max purring on my lap, when I figured I'd go ahead and open it. Inside was a black hoodie with our favorite band's logo. Nice enough. There was a small card. Check the pocket. I reached into the pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Not a receipt this time, a goodbye note. "Victor, I can't do this anymore. The wedding, the house, the whole future we planned, it's not what I want. I've found someone who makes me feel alive again. By the time you read this, I'll have already moved my essential things out. I'll get the rest later. I'm sorry it had to end this way." Just like that. 4 years. Over in a pocket note on my birthday. I sat there holding that note for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. My mind was racing, trying to piece together all the signs I'd ignored. The late nights, the sudden work trips, the way she'd guard her phone, how she'd started picking fights over nothing, probably to justify what she was doing. Just 2 weeks ago, she'd made a backhanded comment about my truck when her colleague pulled up in a new BMW. "Maybe someday we'll upgrade to something from this decade," she'd said with a laugh, linking her arm through mine like it was just a joke. Her colleague had smirked, and I'd felt like I was back in high school, being sized up and found lacking. I called her. Straight to voicemail. Texted. No response. I went to our bedroom and noticed the closet door open. Half her clothes were gone. Her jewelry box was missing. I sat on the edge of the bed, Max rubbing against my leg. At least someone in this house was loyal. I cracked open a soda and sat on the couch, staring at the walls. That's when I remembered something. Our shared cloud account. I grabbed my laptop and logged in. Jackpot. Andrea wasn't exactly tech-savvy. She didn't realize our photo backup was syncing automatically from her phone. There they were. Dozens of pictures of her with some guy. Tall, gym-built, expensive suit type. In restaurants. In a cabin somewhere. On a boat. Based on the timestamps, this had been going on for at least 4 months. And there, buried in a folder labeled Weekend Getaway, was a photo that made my blood boil. Andrea and this guy, standing in front of my car that I let her use because her lease had ended, with weekend bags clearly using my vehicle for their little escape. I dug deeper, found text message backups. The guy's name was Dorian. He was a doctor at the hospital where she did sales calls. Typical. The texts were nauseating. Her telling him how bored she was with me, how she couldn't wait to start her real life with him once she figured out how to leave me without drama. That's when my phone buzzed. A text from Joseph. "Dude, I need to talk to you. It's important." I called him immediately. "What's up?" There was a long pause. "I've been seeing Andrea with someone at the hospital. A lot. I didn't know how to tell you." "Dorian," I said flatly. "Yeah. When did you first see them?" Joseph sighed. "About 3 months ago. In the cafeteria. They were pretty close. I thought maybe it was just a work thing at first. Then last month I saw them in the parking garage. Kissing. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you. Why didn't you say something sooner?" I tried to keep the anger out of my voice. "She saw me watching them that day. Came to my office later and said if I told you, she'd tell HR I was harassing her. I could lose my job, man. I've got the twins and Jen to support. I was going to tell you anyway. I was working up to it, but I'm sorry. It's not your fault. She's gone now anyway. Left me a note. On my birthday. Jesus Christ. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, but I'll think of something." The next day, I called my dad's old friend who's now my insurance agent and canceled the wedding insurance policy. When I explained why, he just sighed. "Son, I've got to call your dad's brother. He'll want to know." 2 hours later, my Uncle Paul was on my front porch with a 6-pack of drinks. Dad's favorite when he was alive. "Had to do this for your cousin Tyler last year," Paul said, handing me a drink. "Better a busted engagement than a busted marriage." We sat in silence for a while. Your dad would have handled this the same way you are, Paul finally said. Just quiet dignity and a clear head. Coming from him, that was the highest compliment possible. Speaking of handling it, I took a week off work to get some things done. First, I changed all the locks. Then I went through our finances. We had a joint account with about $12,000 in it, mostly my money from a recent bonus. I transferred it all to my personal account. Next, I called our wedding venue and photographer, explained the situation, and asked if I could transfer the deposits to my name only. The venue manager, Diane, was surprisingly understanding. Then I put together a folder, screenshots of all the photos and texts I'd found, neatly organized by date. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it yet, but it's important to have ammunition. Every night that week, I stayed up until 2 or 3 a.m., digging deeper. I combed through hospital staff directories, cross-referencing faces, until I found Dorian's profile. Chief neurosurgeon, Harvard Med, picture perfect. I created a spreadsheet tracking when Andrea's late meetings lined up with his surgery schedule. I found his LinkedIn, noting curious gaps in his employment history. I accessed Andrea's Instagram activity through our shared iPad and documented every interaction between them going back 6 months. On day 4, Andrea finally called. Victor, we need to talk about the rest of my things. No hello, no how are you. No sorry for leaving you a freaking note on your birthday. Your things are fine. I'll come by tomorrow around 6 to pick everything up. I changed the locks. You what? You can't do that. Half that house is basically mine. I laughed. Really? Your name isn't on the deed. It isn't on the mortgage. You've never paid a property tax bill or a homeowner's insurance premium. So please, tell me which half is yours. We're engaged. That makes it, we were engaged. Past tense. Just like how you were faithful, you were honest, you were going to marry me. All past tense. She was silent for a moment. This is so typical of you. Being technical instead of reasonable. You left me a breakup note in my birthday present and moved in with another man. Don't talk to me about reasonable. Fine. Be that way. My dad will call you about this. She hung up. Her dad did call the next day. Thomas Whitfield, Esquire, called to inform me that his daughter would be by with a police escort to collect her belongings, and that I should expect to hear from his lawyers about the house situation. Mr. Whitfield, I said calmly, before you go making threats, you might want to ask your daughter about the contents of the cloud account she shared with me, specifically the folders from the Lakeside Inn from March and the weekend at your family cabin in April. I'm happy to share those files with Mrs. Whitfield if necessary. Long pause. I'll call you back. He never did. But Andrea texted an hour later. You're an a-hole. What time can I get my stuff? We arranged for the following Saturday. She showed up with her younger sister Clara instead of Dorian. Smart move on his part. I'd spent the morning packing Andrea's things into black trash bags and cardboard boxes. When they pulled up, I was sitting on the front step, Max in my lap, not even looking in their direction. Clara had always been the opposite of Andrea. Quiet, bookish, actually genuine. She looked uncomfortable as she helped Andrea load boxes into her Range Rover, another gift from Daddy. Sorry about all this, she mumbled when Andrea was back inside. Not your fault, I replied. She hesitated. For what it's worth, I think she's making a huge mistake. Dorian's got a reputation. This isn't the first relationship he's wrecked. That was interesting. Oh? Yeah. Last year he did the same thing with a nurse. Left his fiancée for her, then dumped the nurse 3 months later when he got bored. She glanced toward the house. But don't tell Andrea I said anything. She thinks this is some epic love story. Your secret's safe with me. After they left that night, Clara called. Victor, there's something you should know. Andrea took some things that weren't hers. I saw her pack that signed baseball your dad left you, and the nice watch from your grandfather. Are you sure? Positive. She said since you kept the ring, she deserved something valuable too. I hadn't even thought about the engagement ring. A 2-carat diamond that cost me nearly $15,000. Almost my entire savings at the time. After we hung up, I sat in my dad's old recliner, the one Andrea had always hated and wanted to throw out, and started planning my next move. Taking my family heirlooms was the final straw. This wasn't just about a messy breakup anymore. I needed to know more about Dorian. Joseph was my way in, but I had to be careful given Andrea's threats against his job. We met at a diner far from the hospital where nobody would recognize either of us. His full name is Dorian Chamberlain, Joseph said, sliding a coffee toward me. Neurosurgeon, early 40s, makes around $800,000 a year. Divorced twice. Twice? Andrea knows this? Joseph shrugged. Doubt she cares. You should see the car he drives. Maserati. Custom suits. The whole I'm rich and important package. The hospital must love him. That's the thing. They don't. He's good at his job, but he's on thin ice with administration. There have been complaints about his bedside manner, how he treats nurses, plus some rumors about prescription stuff I can't really talk about. Prescription stuff? Joseph lowered his voice. Let's just say some medications go missing on his shifts. Nothing proven. I nodded slowly. Anything else I should know? That's when Joseph told me about a nurse named Stephanie. Said she used to date Dorian. She works in the ER now, transferred after they broke up. From what he told me, she might have some stories to tell. Finding Stephanie wasn't hard. Hospital directory, a little social media stalking. Getting her to talk to me was the challenge. I stationed myself at the coffee shop across from the hospital and waited through 3 shift changes before I spotted her based on her profile picture. Mid-30s, blonde, tired looking. I approached her and asked if we could talk. Dorian Chamberlain. Her face hardened immediately. I have nothing to say about that jerk. He's with my fiancé now. Or ex-fiancé. That got her attention. Seriously? Let me guess. She works at the hospital? Sales rep? I nodded. Figured. That's his type. Women who look up to him professionally. Makes them easier to control. She grabbed her coffee. Look, I shouldn't be talking about this in public. I just want to understand what I'm dealing with. Fine. 5 minutes. We sat at a corner table. She told me everything. How Dorian had pursued her relentlessly while he was engaged, promised to leave his fiancée, then finally did. 3 months later, he was distant, controlling, started accusing her of cheating when she worked late. When she finally confronted him about pills she found in his locker, he threatened to ruin her nursing career if she talked. The man's a narcissist and possibly an addict, she concluded, but he's protected. His father's on the hospital board. So Andrea's just the latest in a pattern. Exactly. He'll love bomb her, then discard her when he gets bored or she discovers something she shouldn't. She leaned forward. If I were you, I'd be thanking my lucky stars I dodged that bullet. Your ex did you a favor. If you really want to hit Dorian where it hurts, focus on his reputation. It's everything to him. She stood to leave. Good luck. And do yourself a favor, don't try to warn her. People like that have to learn the hard way. As Stephanie walked away, my phone buzzed. A text from Thomas. Meet me tomorrow, 2 p.m. at Riverfront Cafe. Come alone. Andrea's father wanted to meet. This should be interesting. I arrived at Riverfront Cafe 15 minutes early and chose a corner table with my back to the wall, full view of the entrance. Thomas Whitfield was exactly what you'd expect from a corporate lawyer making 7 figures. Expensive suit, immaculate silver hair, the confident posture of someone used to intimidating people. His confident stride faltered when he spotted me already seated, watching him approach. Good. He didn't waste time. I want to discuss your evidence and how we can resolve this situation amicably. The photos, the text messages. You mean the photos of your daughter cheating on me for months? The texts where she plans how to leave me without drama? Or maybe the pictures of them at your family cabin? He flinched slightly at the mention of the cabin. I had no idea they were using the property. Well, they were. Very thoroughly, from the looks of the photos. He cleared his throat, glancing around to make sure no one could hear us. What exactly do you want? My father's signed baseball, my grandfather's watch, both of which she stole when she moved out. That's it? And the $4,000 in wedding deposits that came from my account. He nodded. I'll get your items back. You'll have them by the end of the week. He turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I don't approve of how she handled this. Her mother and I raised her better. As he walked away, I called after him. One more thing. Tell Andrea that if anything else of mine mysteriously disappears, those photos go to your wife, your partners, and anyone else who might be interested. 3 days later, a courier delivered a package to my office. The baseball, the watch, and a cashier's check for $4,000. No note. I didn't expect one. That evening, I got a text from Clara. Can we meet? It's important. We met at a quiet bar downtown. Clara looked stressed, fidgeting with her drink. What's up? I asked. Andrea doesn't know I'm here, but I thought you should know what's happening. She's miserable. Not my problem anymore. I know. But Dorian's showing his true colors already. Controlling, jealous. He checks her phone, questions her about every male client. Last week he surprised her by showing up at what was supposed to be a business dinner. Again, not seeing how this concerns me. Clara sighed. She's talking about quitting her job because he doesn't like her working with male doctors. She's giving up her career for this guy. She made a mistake. A huge, stupid mistake that she's too proud to admit. You know the real reason she left that note in your birthday gift? She was too cowardly to face you. She knew if she had to tell you in person, she might not go through with it. Why are you telling me all this? Because despite everything, I know you cared about her. Really cared. Not like Dorian, who just sees her as a trophy. She hesitated. And because I've always thought you deserved better than how she treated you. I appreciate your concern, I said carefully. But I'm moving on with my life. I'm good, actually. Of course, she said quickly, looking away. I just thought you should know. As we finished our drinks, I found myself wondering why Clara had really reached out. Was it just concern for her sister? Or was there something more? Either way, the wheels in my head were turning. I now had allies I never expected. Joseph at the hospital, Stephanie with her inside knowledge, and possibly Clara on the inside of Andrea's new life, plus whatever information Thomas might share to keep his wife from finding out about the cabin photos. Over the next weeks, I put my plan into motion. It required patience, which was fine. I had plenty of time now that I wasn't planning a wedding. First step, I reconnected with Craig, a college friend who now worked for the state medical board. Over dinner, I casually mentioned some concerns about a doctor I knew who might have prescription issues. I'm not asking you to do anything unethical, I assured him. Just wondering what the process would be if someone wanted to report suspicious behavior. Craig explained that complaints were taken seriously, especially those involving controlled substances, and would trigger a review. He gave me the details for filing anonymously. Just be sure your concerns are legitimate, he warned. False reports can backfire badly. Then I met with Stephanie again over dinner to dig deeper into Dorian's sketchy behavior. She was quiet at first, but after a while she opened up. Turns out she'd found oxycodone that wasn't prescribed to him. When she confronted him, he fed her some BS about needing it for an old sports injury, but she knew it was way more pills than anyone would actually need. She noticed weird patterns at work too. Sometimes he'd be super wired and focused, other times he'd disappear for half an hour and come back looking totally different, calmer, with pinpoint pupils. Classic signs. When I asked if she'd make an official statement, she shut that down fast. Her career was on the line, but she basically hinted that if someone were to tip off the right people, she wouldn't be upset about it. Meanwhile, I started hanging out with Clara more. She'd text me updates about Andrea's train wreck relationship with Dorian, and we'd grab coffee to talk. During one of these meetups, she told me Dorian was throwing this massive housewarming party. Andrea had officially moved into his $1.2 million mansion in the rich part of town. Clara rolled her eyes, telling me how Andrea wanted everyone to see their perfect life. Their dad was going just because hospital bigwigs would be there, but their mom wasn't having any of it. The final piece came together when Joseph texted me. Dorian's scheduled for a high-profile surgery the Monday after his big party. Senator's daughter, media coverage, perfect timing. The night before the party, I filed an anonymous complaint with the medical board, detailing concerns about Dr. Chamberlain possibly being impaired during patient care, with specific dates that Joseph had helped me identify when medication inventory didn't match usage logs. I included just enough verifiable details to trigger a serious look. Then I contacted a buddy who worked security at the hospital, slipped him $200 to let me know if anything interesting happened during Dorian's shifts the following week. I didn't attend the party, obviously, but Clara sent me pictures throughout the evening. Andrea looking plastic perfect in a designer dress. Dorian holding court among his colleagues. Andrea's dad schmoozing with hospital executives. Everything looked immaculate, expensive, enviable. It was exactly what I wanted to see. The higher they climbed, the harder they'd fall. The Monday after the party, Dorian performed his high-profile surgery on schedule. Everything went perfectly, on the surface. What didn't make the news was that a random drug test had been ordered for all surgical staff that morning, part of a new hospital policy that mysteriously only affected Dorian's team. My security friend texted me Tuesday morning. Doctor, C called an emergency meeting with the administration. Left looking pissed. On Wednesday, Joseph reported that Dorian was conspicuously absent from the hospital. By Friday, the rumor mill was churning. Dorian had been suspended pending an investigation. I waited. Patience was key now. The following Tuesday, Clara called me in a panic. Victor, everything's falling apart. Dorian's license has been suspended. Something about drugs. Andrea's freaking out. That's unfortunate, I said, keeping my voice neutral. How's she handling it? She's in denial. Keep saying it's a mistake, that someone's trying to sabotage him. Clara paused. She also found out about his ex-fiancés. Plural. There were 3, not 2. He sounds like she's having quite the awakening. It gets worse. The hospital board is meeting tomorrow to decide whether to terminate his contract. With the suspension and pending investigation, his malpractice insurance is threatening to drop him. If he loses his job, he loses everything, I finished. Yeah, and Andrea's on his lease now, but not on any of his accounts. She put everything into this relationship, even used her savings to help furnish their place. I almost felt bad. Almost. 2 days later, the other shoe dropped. Dorian was terminated. The medical board investigation was proceeding, and according to Clara, he was spiraling, blaming Andrea for his bad luck, drinking heavily, becoming verbally abusive. She finally sees him for what he is, Clara told me over yet another coffee meeting. But she's trapped. She's afraid to leave because he's becoming unstable, and she has nowhere to go anyway. Dad offered to help, but she's too proud to admit she was wrong. I nodded sympathetically, while inside I thought, karma's a bitch. That night around 2 a.m., my doorbell rang repeatedly. Through my newly installed security camera, I could see Dorian swaying on my porch, clearly drunk. I didn't answer. He rang again, then started pounding on the door, shouting incoherently. I calmly called the police, recorded the entire incident, and filed a report the next morning. 3 days later, my mailbox was damaged. The day after that, I noticed one of my truck tires was slowly losing air. I didn't react, just quietly upgraded my security system, added cameras covering every approach to my house, and documented everything meticulously. The next evening, my doorbell rang around 9 p.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I checked the security camera, I saw Andrea standing there, makeup streaked down her face. I debated not answering, but curiosity won out. "What do you want?" I asked through the intercom. "Victor, please, I need to talk to you. Just 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I opened the door but stayed in the doorway, blocking entry. Andrea looked terrible. "You were right," she blurted. "About everything. Dorian's not who I thought he was. He's been lying about everything. His finances, his past, even his medical issues. And this concerns me how exactly? I made a horrible mistake. The worst mistake of my life." Her voice cracked. "I had everything with you. Stability, honesty, real love. And I threw it away for what? Some fantasy that fell apart in months? Again, not seeing how this is my problem. I need help, Victor. Dorian's losing everything. His license might be permanently revoked. The condo is going into foreclosure because apparently he's been leveraged to the hilt. He's drinking constantly, becoming scary. Last night he shoved me into a wall. Sounds like you should call the police, not your ex." I started to close the door. "Wait!" She put her hand on the door. "I have nowhere else to go. My parents are out of town, and Clara's place is too small. I just need somewhere to stay for a few days until I figure things out." I laughed. Actually laughed. "You're joking, right? You want to stay here? After what you did? I know I don't deserve your help, but you're the only person who's ever truly cared about me, and I—" "Stop." I held up my hand. "Just stop. The woman I cared about wouldn't have left a coward's note in a birthday gift, wouldn't have taken family heirlooms out of spite, wouldn't have moved in with another man without a second thought. I was confused. Dorian manipulated me. No, you made choices, adult choices. Now you get to live with the consequences." Her face hardened, that familiar entitled anger surfacing. "So that's it? You're just going to leave me with nowhere to go? After 4 years together? Funny how that works, isn't it? By the way, how's Dorian's career going? Heard he had some trouble recently." She stared at me, realization dawning. "It was you. You reported him." I shrugged. "Someone had to stop an impaired doctor from operating on people. Think of it as my public service. You ruined his life, his career, everything we had." "No, his addiction and dishonesty did that. I just made sure the right people were watching at the right time." I leaned closer. "And for what it's worth, I had help. Turns out there are plenty of people who've been hurt by you two." "Clara," she whispered. "She's been feeding you information. And that nurse, Stephanie. People don't like being used and discarded, Andrea. Something to keep in mind for your next relationship." The next day, Dorian showed up again, pounding on my door, clearly drunk at 11 a.m. I didn't bother opening up, just called the police and watched through the security camera as they escorted him away, threatening to arrest him for trespassing and public intoxication. I added the footage to my growing documentation file. Andrea tried a different approach, sending her father to negotiate. Thomas Whitfield looked uncomfortable standing on my porch. "Victor, I understand there's been some unfortunate developments with Dorian's situation." "Very unfortunate," I agreed. "Addiction is a serious disease." "Yes, well, Andrea finds herself in a difficult position." "She certainly does." He shifted uncomfortably. "I'm aware that you and she have a complicated history, but she's in a vulnerable place right now. And as her father, I'm concerned about her safety and well-being. As you should be. I'm wondering if we could come to some arrangement. A temporary truce, if you will." I raised an eyebrow. "What kind of arrangement?" "Andrea needs somewhere stable to stay until Dorian's situation resolves, or she can find her own place." Your house has the space, and you two were close once. E. You want me to take in your daughter after she left me for another man? The same daughter who stole family heirlooms and claimed half my house despite contributing nothing to it? He had the grace to look embarrassed. I understand it's an unusual request. Unusual? It's delusional. I'm prepared to make it worth your while. Say, $20,000 to let her use your spare room for a month or two. No strings attached. I stared at him. You're trying to buy me off? To clean up Andrea's mess? I'm trying to protect my daughter. Where was this concern when she was destroying my life? When she was moving in with a man you knew was still married when they met? Thomas paled slightly. How did you know that Dorian was still legally married to his second wife when he and Andrea started dating? I did my homework, Mr. Whitfield. Just like I looked into his prescription habits and professional misconduct. He was quiet for a moment. What do you want, Victor? Nothing from you. Or Andrea. I want to be left alone to rebuild the life your daughter shattered. As he turned to leave, I added, for what it's worth, Clara tried to warn her. Multiple times. Maybe start listening to your younger daughter. She seems to be the only one in your family with a moral compass. The next few weeks brought more desperate attempts at contact. Andrea sent tearful voicemails. Dorian, when he was sober enough, sent threatening texts that I documented and forwarded to his lawyer. Thomas tried again with a higher offer, $50,000 this time. I declined them all. Eventually, they all got the message. Andrea moved back to her parents' house, tail between her legs. Dorian, facing criminal charges for prescription fraud on top of his license suspension, reportedly left town. The perfect couple crashed and burned in spectacular fashion, leaving nothing but wreckage behind. Andrea's Instagram, once filled with perfect couple photos and luxury lifestyle shots, shifted to vague inspirational quotes about forgiveness and starting over. Her friends from the hospital slowly stopped interacting with her posts. Comment sections that were once filled with fire emojis and couple goals declarations went eerily quiet. According to Clara, Andrea had been crashing with different friends each week, wearing out her welcome each time with her neediness and drama, before finally admitting defeat and moving home. Former colleagues stopped returning her calls. The pharmaceutical company where she worked placed her on administrative leave after Dorian's drug issues became public knowledge. They couldn't have a sales rep linked to prescription fraud, even by association. For a woman whose entire identity had been tied to status and appearance, it was the ultimate fall. As for me, I kept the house. Got that dog I always wanted, a rescue lab mix named Cooper. Started playing basketball with Joseph again. Fixed up my Tacoma with a new sound system and wheels. Max the cat eventually accepted Cooper, and the three of us settled into a comfortable bachelor routine. And occasionally, I meet Clara for coffee. Just as friends, for now. She's nothing like her sister, and that's the highest compliment I can give. The engagement ring? Sold. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just watching someone suffer. It's watching them realize, too late, exactly what they threw away, and knowing that you've finally moved on to something better. It's been 6 months now. Life has a weird way of working out. Cooper, my lab shepherd mix, is snoring at my feet as I write this. Max is perched on the armrest of my dad's old recliner, keeping his usual watchful eye. Best decision I ever made was keeping both of them. They don't give a damn about my earning potential, or whether I drive the right car. Work is going well. Got promoted to project lead last month. The overtime I put in after the breakup actually paid off. As for Andrea and Dorian, the aftermath was even more satisfying than I expected. Dorian's license suspension became permanent when the investigation uncovered he'd been writing prescriptions using other doctors' DEA numbers. He's facing criminal charges and will likely never practice medicine again. Last I heard from Joseph, Dorian filed for bankruptcy and moved back to his hometown in Ohio. The $1.2 million house was foreclosed on, and his Maserati repossessed in the hospital parking lot, a moment that apparently became legendary hospital gossip. Andrea tried to salvage her pharmaceutical sales career, but her reputation was tarnished by association. Plus, selling to doctors gets complicated when you're known for sleeping with one who lost his license for drug issues. She eventually found a lower-paying position at a smaller company, a significant step down from her previous role. Last week, I drove past her in my freshly detailed Tacoma with its new wheels. She was driving her dad's old Honda, a far cry from the Range Rover. Our eyes met for a second at the stoplight. I didn't react at all, just drove on. That moment seemed to hit her harder than any insult could have. Thomas had to deal with his own fallout. Turns out the cabin photos got leaked somehow, not by me, I swear, to his wife. She was furious that he'd been covering for Andrea's affair, especially since Dorian had been a family friend. According to Clara, their parents had the fight of the century, and Thomas spent a month sleeping in his office. Speaking of Clara, remember those coffee meetings? They've turned into dinner dates. We took things glacially slow, both of us hesitant for obvious reasons. But there's something genuine there that I never had with Andrea. Andrea found out about us 3 weeks ago when she stopped by her parents' place and saw us having dinner with them. The meltdown was epic. Accusations of betrayal, screaming about how I was just using Clara to get back at her. The whole dramatic package. Clara, who I'd always seen as the quiet one, shut it down with 5 simple words. Not everything is about you. I've never been prouder of anyone. The irony isn't lost on me. Andrea threw away a solid relationship for a fantasy that imploded, while I found something real with someone who was right there all along. Her parents have been surprisingly supportive of us. I think they see it as some kind of karmic balance. So that's it, Reddit. Thanks for reading. Now tell me, boys, how would you've handled it if you were in my shoes? Story 4. My fiancée live-streamed her bachelorette party. He's pathetic in bed. Should I even marry him? She sneered as her friends laughed. Don't bother, I commented. Then I sent the video to her dad and canceled the wedding. Seconds later, her maid of honor was calling me in panic. Hey everyone, before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hey Reddit! My fiancée went live on Instagram during her bachelorette party. She started mocking me and asking if she should even marry me while hundreds of people watched and laughed. Also bragged about hooking up with her coworker. I screen recorded everything and canceled our wedding. Strap in because what followed was complete chaos. So this happened about 4 months ago, and I'm finally ready to share this absolute train wreck with you guys. I, 30 male, was engaged to Dora, 29 female, for about 8 months. Thought we had a solid thing going. You know, the whole adult relationship where you split bills, plan vacations together, and argue about whether we need the expensive paper towels at Costco. I was literally sitting at my kitchen table Thursday night, laptop open, paying the final $3,200 deposit to our wedding caterer. Yeah, that's real money we're talking about here. I'm doing the responsible adult thing, checking items off our wedding spreadsheet, because of course we had a color-coded spreadsheet, feeling pretty good about life. My phone buzzes. Dora is live on Instagram. Now Dora and her crew went to some fancy Airbnb in the mountains for her bachelorette weekend. I'm thinking it's going to be the usual stuff. Mimosas, silly games where they make her wear a sash that says, Future Mrs. O'Brien. Maybe some embarrassing photos I'll get to roast her about later. Standard bachelorette content. I click on the live stream, and there's my fiancé front and center, wearing that exact sash I just mentioned. The camera's being held by her maid of honor Lexi, who's clearly had a few. There's like 200 plus people watching this thing. Dora's face is flushed, she's holding some fancy bottle, and they're all laughing way too hard at everything. Then Lexi, being the absolute genius she is, decides to get deep. Okay, real talk, she slurs into the camera. You're getting locked down next month. How does it feel? Here's where my life took a hard left turn. Dora takes this dramatic swig from her bottle and goes, Damien's great, you know? He's so stable. And guys, the way she said stable, like it was a medical condition. Like being reliable was some kind of personality disorder. Her friends are giggling, and Dora's on a roll now. He pays the bills on time. His car is always clean. He remembers to take the trash out every Tuesday. Each thing she listed sounded like she was reading my obituary. Some voice from off-camera yells, but is he fun though? And this is where Dora really brought out the big guns. She leans into the camera with this look. You know that look people get when they're about to say something they think is hilarious, but is actually just mean? Yeah, that one. He's a great provider, she says, doing air quotes around great. My parents absolutely love him. Then she pauses, takes another swig, and the cruelty just starts pouring out. But God, he's so boring. Like you guys have no idea. Her friends are already giggling, sensing blood in the water. He tries so hard to impress me all the time. It's actually kind of sad. Like, he'll plan these elaborate date nights and get all excited about it, and I'm just sitting there like, she makes this exaggerated yawn gesture that gets huge laughs. Lexi, being the supportive friend she is, decides to pile on. Wait, didn't you say he still tucks his shirts into his jeans in 2024? Oh my God, yes, Dora squeals. And he does this thing where he checks himself in every mirror we pass. Like, dude, the receding hairline isn't going anywhere. Just accept it. The room is dying laughing now. And don't get me started about how boring he is in bed, she says, lowering her voice like she's sharing state secrets. He's so eager to please, but absolutely no idea what he's doing. I have to fake it every single time just to get it over with. The comments are going insane now. Laughing emojis, brutal messages, people tagging their friends to watch this train wreck. Lexi's practically falling over laughing. Lexi actually had to wipe tears. So honestly, guys, Dora says, looking directly into the camera with this smug expression, should I even marry him? The room absolutely erupted. Her friends are losing their minds. The chat is going crazy with fire emojis and "don't do it, girl" comments. Lexi's laughing so hard the camera's shaking like we're in an earthquake. But wait, it gets worse. Someone in the background yells, "What about Marcus?" And Dora's eyes light up like she just remembered her favorite story. "Oh my God, Marcus!" She practically squeals. Marcus is this guy from her marketing department. I'd met him at a couple of company parties. So last month at the company retreat, she starts, and I'm sitting there thinking she's not about to say what I think she's about to say. But she absolutely did. With 200 plus people watching and the comments going crazy, Dora proceeds to give a play-by-play of hooking up with this guy in a hotel room during her company retreat. She's laughing, her friends are shrieking, and she's giving details that would make a sailor blush. The thing is, I already started screen recording. Call it instinct, but something told me I was going to need proof of this conversation later. And me? I'm sitting there. Deposit confirmation email still open on my laptop, watching the girl who was supposed to be my wife soon perform our relationship like it's some kind of stand-up routine for internet strangers, while also confessing to cheating on me. She wasn't asking the question to be funny. She was asking because she genuinely didn't know the answer. And she was asking 200 plus random people on Instagram instead of, the guy she was supposed to marry in 4 weeks. Oh, and she'd been cheating on me with her coworker. That's when something just clicked off in my brain, like a circuit breaker flipping. The background noise of my apartment, the hum of the fridge, traffic outside, all just went dead silent. I was logged into my main Instagram account, the one with my actual face as the profile picture. I typed exactly 2 words into the live chat. Don't bother. Then I closed the app, but not before I saved that screen recording to my phone. Then I closed my laptop and just sat there for a minute. My heart wasn't racing or anything. It was more like this weird, calm certainty. Like when you finally solve a puzzle that's been driving you crazy. Then the practical side of my brain kicked in, and I realized I had about 12 hours before this whole thing was going to blow up in my face. Time to handle business. First stop, the wedding venue. I opened my texts and found our coordinator, Deborah. Professional woman, probably deals with crazy people all the time. I typed out the most polite cancellation message I could manage. Deborah, this is Damian O'Brien. Please consider this message my formal notification that I am canceling our wedding scheduled for October 12th. I understand the deposit is non-refundable. Please confirm receipt of this message. Thank you. Hit send. Next up, our wedding planning spreadsheet. This thing was our Bible. Every vendor, every deposit, every guest's dietary restrictions. Dora had shared editing access with me months ago. I made a copy to my personal Google Drive, then went back to the original and did something beautiful. I found Dora's name in the sharing settings and clicked Remove Access. Just like that, she was locked out of 4 months of planning. Petty? Maybe? Necessary? Absolutely. The caterer was next. I had literally just sent them $3,200 20 minutes earlier. I fired off another professional email. Hello, further to my payment this evening, the event has now been canceled. As per our contract, I understand this payment and the initial deposit are non-refundable. No further action needed. Regards, Damian O'Brien. 1 hour later, my phone started ringing. Lexi's face popping up on the screen. The same face I just watched encouraging my fiancé to publicly roast me and confess to cheating. I let it go to voicemail and immediately got hit with a barrage of texts. Damian, call me now. What did you do? Dora just got an email from the venue WTF is going on? I put my phone on silent and went to grab a drink. The thing is, I wasn't trying to hurt Dora. I was just answering her question. She asked if she should marry me, and I gave her my honest opinion. Everything else was just paperwork. Well, almost everything else. The next 24 hours were like living through a social media hurricane. My phone became ground zero for the most unhinged collection of missed calls and text messages I've ever seen. Dora tried calling me 53 times. The voicemails went through the entire emotional spectrum. Confusion, anger, bargaining, more anger. then this weird entitled rage like I had somehow wronged her by responding to her question. Lexi was blowing up my phone too, alternating between, "You need to fix this right now," and "How could you be so heartless?" Which was rich coming from someone who was literally holding the camera while my relationship got murdered for content. But the real masterpiece was the group text situation. Apparently, Lexi had created some kind of emergency response chat with all our mutual friends called Supporting Dora. I wasn't in it, obviously, but my buddy Jake screenshotted me some highlights. Lexi. Damien had a complete meltdown and canceled the wedding over a harmless joke. Dora is devastated. He's being totally unreasonable and won't even talk to her. The responses were predictably dramatic. "Oh my God, what happened?" "Sending love to Dora." "Men are so fragile." I didn't respond to any of it. Instead, I did some housekeeping that was long overdue. See, Dora and Lexi had this little side hustle making wedding invitations and social media graphics for people. Cute business, except they'd been using my premium Canva account and my Adobe Creative Cloud subscription for the past year. We're talking like $80 a month in software they were using to make money. I logged into both accounts, changed the passwords, and revoked all shared access. If they wanted to keep their business running, they could pay for their own tools. Then I remembered our shared Amazon account. My credit card was the primary payment method, and Dora had been ordering everything from face masks to protein powder on my dime for months. I logged out of all devices and changed that password too. Friday afternoon, I heard Dora's key in the lock. I was sitting on the couch reading a book, this biography of some Navy SEAL that my dad recommended. Perfect timing, honestly. She came through the door dragging her suitcase, still wearing the same clothes from the live stream, looking like she hadn't slept. "You have 5 minutes to explain yourself," she said, and she was trying to sound like some kind of prosecutor, voice trembling with this completely unearned righteous anger. "Wait, explain what, Dora?" I looked up from my book. "You asked a question. I gave you an answer. Then I acted on that answer. It was a joke. I was having fun with my friends. It was my bachelorette party." The volume kept escalating with each excuse, like if she just got loud enough, reality would bend to her will. "Was it a joke when you called me boring and mocked my appearance to hundreds of strangers? Or when you lied about me being desperate for validation while your friends laughed along? What about the detailed complaints about our intimate life? Was that all just harmless fun too? What about Marcus? Was that a joke too?" Her face went white. She'd completely forgotten about the full extent of her performance. "You were performing, Dora. You turned our entire relationship into entertainment for strangers. You humiliated me in ways I didn't even know were possible. And you forgot your most important audience member was watching." "No, it's you who humiliated me," she shrieked. "You commented for everyone to see. Then you called the venue. My phone exploded. Do you know how embarrassing that is? What am I supposed to say to people now?" "Oh, that must be very embarrassing," I said. "But you were the one broadcasting to hundreds of strangers. The humiliation started when you held up our relationship for public ridicule and confessed to cheating on me. I just ended the show." That seemed to break something in her brain. She just stood there, opening and closing her mouth like a fish, trying to find some new angle to make this my fault. That's when her phone started ringing. Lexi's name flashing on the screen. Dora answered immediately, putting it on speaker like she wanted backup. "Dora, babe, where are you? Are you okay?" Lexi's voice was dripping with fake concern. "I'm at the apartment with Damien. He's being completely unreasonable and—" "I'm almost there," Lexi interrupted. I started recording on my phone. Something told me this was about to get messy, and I wanted evidence of whatever was coming next. 5 minutes later, there was aggressive pounding on my door. I opened it to find Lexi looking like she'd rushed over in her pajamas, face flushed with righteous anger. "How dare you!" She launched into me before I could even say hello. "You completely humiliated Dora. Everyone's talking about it. You're a pathetic excuse for a man. Lexi, you need to leave my apartment. Now." But she pushed past me into the living room where Dora was sitting on the couch, tears streaming down her face in this performance of victimhood. "Look what you did to her!" Lexi continued her assault. "She made one little joke and you destroyed her entire life. You canceled everything without even talking to her. What kind of psycho does that? The kind who doesn't appreciate being publicly mocked and cheated on?" I said calmly, making sure my phone was still recording. "You were literally holding the camera while she tore me apart for entertainment." "Oh, get over yourself," Lexi scoffed. "You're acting like such a victim. Dora deserves so much better than some boring, insecure loser who can't take a joke. I'm asking you once more to leave my apartment before I call the police." She laughed, this ugly, mocking sound. "Call them. Tell them your feelings got hurt. Dora doesn't need a pathetic loser like you anyway. You did her a favor. Dora had been quiet during this whole exchange, but now she stood up with this dramatic sigh. You're right, Lexi. I don't need this. She looked at me with pure disdain. Then she disappeared into the bedroom while Lexi continued glaring at me. You know what the sad part is, Lexi said, her voice dripping with condescension. Dora was actually going to marry you out of pity. I see, I simply said, still recording. Dora came back out with an overnight bag, her face set in this mask of wounded dignity. Come on, Lexi. Let's go somewhere I'm actually wanted. They headed for the door, Lexi shooting me one last venomous look. Don't get too happy, you haven't won, she said. Dora has rights too, you know. You deserve to be destroyed and we will make sure of that. Lexi, next time you want to threaten someone, maybe don't do it on camera. I held up my phone, still recording. Her face went white as she realized what I'd captured. They left without another word, slamming the door behind them. Dora ended up staying at Lexi's that night, which was honestly a relief. I needed space to think, and the apartment felt peaceful for the first time in months. But the next morning brought a whole new level of crazy. My phone rang at 8 a.m. Dora's dad, Isaac. Now Isaac's a good guy, retired electrician, built his own deck, the kind of dad who actually knows how to fix things. I'd always gotten along with him pretty well. Damien? His voice was heavy. What the hell is going on? Dora told me you had some kind of breakdown over her being silly at her party and canceled everything without warning. I could hear it in his voice. He was operating on Dora's version of events, which I'm sure painted her as the innocent victim of my overreaction. Isaac, that's not what happened. At all. Do you have a few minutes? Because there's a lot more to this story. I explained everything. Isaac went quiet for a long time. You could practically hear him thinking. Son, he said slowly, that doesn't sound like the story Dora told me at all. She said she made a few jokes and you went nuclear on her. I figured she might spin it differently. That's why I recorded the whole thing. Would you like me to send it to you? Another long pause. Send it over. I sent him the recording. It's about 15 minutes long. The worst parts start around the 5-minute mark. He got silent for a minute. I'll call you back. He hung up, and I went about my morning routine. About an hour later, my phone rang again. Isaac's voice was completely different now. Tired, but also angry in a way I'd never heard from him. Jesus Christ, Damien! I'm so sorry. I had no idea she could be that cruel. The shame in his voice was unmistakable. She told me you couldn't take a joke about being stable and boring. She didn't mention the bedroom stuff or mocking your appearance or that Marcus situation. And Lexi egging her on like that. He trailed off, clearly disgusted. I'm not telling you this to turn you against your daughter, Isaac. I just wanted you to know the full story. No, son, I appreciate you showing me the truth. What Dora did, that wasn't just being dramatic or silly. That was deliberately cruel. His voice cracked a little. I raised her better than that. Or at least I thought I did. I'm sorry you had to see it. Don't you apologize for her behavior. I'm the one who owes you an apology. And I'm going to have some very serious words with my daughter about what I just watched. The conversation was different after that. Not just a tired dad dealing with his daughter's drama, but a man genuinely ashamed of what his child had done to someone he cared about. What happens now? We untangle our lives, I said. That's all. But untangling was easier said than done. The first major issue hit me 2 days later, when I went to fire up some Call of Duty to blow off steam and realized something was missing from my entertainment center, my PS4 controllers. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's just game controllers, right? Wrong. These weren't just any controllers. I had 2 limited edition ones that cost me $200 each, plus my regular ones. Dora knew I was particular about my gaming setup, and she'd taken them when she packed her stuff Friday night. I sat down and wrote another email, this time copying Dora's dad. Dora, I'm fine with you taking your belongings. However, I need my PS4 controllers returned immediately. All 4 of them, including the 2 limited edition ones from my entertainment center. These were not yours to take. This needs to be returned tomorrow. And about the apartment? Now the rent situation was ridiculous too. We were both on the lease, both legally responsible, but Dora apparently thought she could just peace out without consequences. Her half of the rent was now a week overdue. So I continued the email as follows. Dora, this is a reminder that your half of the rent, $1,100, is now 7 days overdue. As per our signed lease agreement, we are both legally responsible for the full amount. Failure to pay will negatively impact both our credit scores and may result in eviction proceedings. Please remit payment immediately or sign a lease release form with the landlord. Regards, Damien. The phone call came within 10 minutes. I can't believe you emailed my dad. Dora was furious. Hi, Dora, I said, putting the call on speaker so I could keep making my morning coffee. Are you calling to tell me you've paid the rent? I'm not paying rent for a place I'm not living in. You kicked me out? I didn't kick you out, Dora. You left after you torched our engagement. Our legal obligation to the landlord didn't leave with you. I'm protecting my credit score. You should be concerned about yours. This is so cruel. You're trying to ruin me. No, I'm trying to pay my bills. Something you once described as a stable and boring. Turns out it's pretty important. I hung up and went back to my coffee. Amazing how peaceful mornings could be without someone treating basic adulting like it was some kind of character flaw. But I wasn't done with my housekeeping yet. That screen recording from the live stream was still sitting on my phone and I'd been thinking about what to do with it. Dora worked at a mid-sized marketing firm, the kind of place that takes their professional image pretty seriously. They also had a pretty strict policy about employee conduct, especially anything that could reflect poorly on the company. I uploaded the recording to Google Drive and sat on it for a few days, thinking. Part of me wanted to just delete it and move on. But then I remembered Dora's smug face as she told that story, how she was treating our relationship, and her infidelity, like entertainment for hundreds of strangers. So I composed a professional email to her company's HR department. To whom it may concern, I am writing to bring to your attention a matter involving two of your employees, Dora Miller and Marcus Davis. I have video evidence of Ms. Miller publicly discussing inappropriate conduct between herself and Mr. Davis during a company retreat, which may violate your professional conduct policies. The attached recording speaks for itself. Please let me know if you require any additional information. Regards, Damian O'Brien. I attached the Google Drive link and hit send. Sometimes consequences come looking for you. The next phase of this circus involved Dora's mother, Isabel, showing up at my door unannounced. Isabel is what you'd call a classic Karen. Blonde highlights, always wants to speak to the manager, thinks the world revolves around her precious daughter. She was practically vibrating with righteous indignation when I opened the door. Damian Jonathan O'Brien, she started, using my full name like I was in trouble at school. How dare you destroy my daughter's life? She's been crying for days because of what you did to her. I just stood there, leaning against my doorframe, letting her build up steam. She was just having fun with her friends and you couldn't handle a little teasing. You're supposed to be a man. Real men don't throw tantrums over harmless jokes. She was getting louder and more animated, hands waving around like she was conducting an orchestra of outrage. And now she's homeless, living on someone's couch, all because you couldn't take a little criticism. You've ruined her reputation, cost her father thousands of dollars, and for what? Your fragile ego? I pulled out my phone and started dialing while she continued her rant. Dora was the best thing that ever happened to you, and you threw it all away because, hey, Isaac, I said into the phone, cutting her off mid-sentence. Yeah, I'm good. Quick question, though. Why is Isabel at my apartment harassing me right now? Isabel's eyes went wide. The mention of her husband's name caught her completely off guard. Her mouth actually fell open. Could you hold on 1 second? I asked Isaac, then looked at Isabel. He wants to talk to you. I held out the phone. She took it with this confused look, like she couldn't figure out how her husband had gotten involved. Hello? Isaac? I'm just trying to... That's when I heard it. Even from a foot away, I could hear Isaac's voice through the phone, and he was not happy. His voice was raised enough that I could make out most of what he was saying. Get your ass home right now. I told you to stay out of this. You have no idea what actually happened. Isabel's face went through several emotions. Confusion, embarrassment, then stubborn defiance. But Isaac, she's our daughter and he... More yelling from the phone. I caught fragments. Saw the video and embarrassed enough and not another word. Isabel kept trying to interrupt, maintaining that entitled energy even while getting dressed down by her own husband. I don't care what video you saw. I know my daughter and... The line went dead. Isaac had hung up on her. Isabel stared at the phone for a second, then handed it back to me with this forced smile that fooled absolutely nobody. Well, she said, trying to salvage some dignity, I still think you overreacted. She turned and walked away, but I could hear her muttering under her breath about real men and how no one understands what Dora's going through. I closed the door and went back to my coffee. Amazing how quickly people change their tune when they realize they don't have backup. Meanwhile, the Supporting Dora group chat was apparently becoming a salt mine of complaints about me. A couple of friends who weren't completely brainwashed sent me screenshots. The narrative they'd settled on was that I was being cold and punitive, for living my life and paying my bills while Dora was the one who nuked our wedding on livestream. But the real entertainment came when Lexi decided to escalate things. She created a new group chat, this time including some of Dora's extended family and a few people from her work. Her opening message was a masterclass in manipulation. Hey everyone, as you may have heard, Damien had a massive, unprovoked outburst and called off the wedding. Dora is obviously devastated. He completely overreacted to a silly joke she made at her bachelorette party and is now refusing to speak to her. We're all just trying to rally around her during this awful time. The responses were predictably dramatic. OMG, what happened? Sending love to Dora. What a psycho. I didn't dignify it with a response. Instead, I did a little more housekeeping. Remember that business Dora and Lexi were running? The one using my software subscriptions? Well, apparently they had a few client projects in progress that were due this week. Projects they could no longer complete because they didn't have access to the design software anymore. My phone started buzzing with increasingly frantic messages from Lexi. You need to give us access back to Canva. We have deadlines. This is affecting our clients. You're being vindictive. I blocked her number. Not my circus, not my monkeys. The controller's situation was still unresolved, and honestly, that was bothering me more than anything else. Those weren't just any controllers. They were limited edition, expensive as hell, and she'd deliberately taken them just to mess with me. It was petty theft, plain and simple. Isaac called me later that week. His voice was tired in a way that told me he'd been dealing with his daughter's drama nonstop. About the controllers, son, he said. I'll make sure you get them back. I appreciate that, Isaac. She had no right to take them. Let's meet. All three of us. Sort this out like adults. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to just walk away. Let her keep the controllers just to avoid whatever drama was coming. But nope, I'll get my controllers back. The principal matter. Okay, I said, but I'm not negotiating anything except getting my stuff back and settling the financial stuff. Everything else is done. Understood. I'll set it up. The meeting happened at a diner downtown. Neutral ground, Isaac's suggestion. It felt like a hostage negotiation, which I guess it kind of was. Dora showed up looking like she'd been living in sweatpants for a week, which she probably had. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she had this wounded expression that I'm sure worked great on her dad, but did absolutely nothing for me. Isaac looked like he'd aged 5 years and 2 weeks. Being the parent of a 29-year-old who still acted like a teenager in crisis mode was clearly taking its toll. He didn't waste time with small talk. First, he pulled a bag with my controllers in it, sliding it across the table to me. These are yours. Dora flinched but didn't look up from her coffee. I don't know why this is such a big deal, they're just… Dora! Isaac's voice was sharp. Not another word. I checked the bag. All 4 controllers were there, including my limited edition ones. The relief was immediate. I slipped the bag under the table without a word. Now, the rent, Isaac continued, pulling out a piece of paper, like he was reading from a prepared statement. I've sent you the $1,100 for last month's rent, Damien. I've also spoken to your landlord and paid the fee to have Dora's name removed from the lease. Well, that's just great, Dora muttered. Now I'm homeless because he couldn't take a… Dora, I said enough. Isaac turned to look at his daughter with this expression of pure parental exhaustion. This is the last time. The absolute last time I bail you out of a mess you made. Dora mumbled something that sounded like it was his fault too, but Isaac wasn't having it. Then came the final item on the agenda, wedding costs. This was the part I knew she was waiting for, her chance to claim some kind of financial victimhood. We need to sort out the rest of the wedding expenses, Isaac said. It's pretty simple, I replied, pulling out my own list. You and Dora paid for her dress and the invitations. I paid the non-refundable deposits for the band, the caterer, the photographer, and the full cost of our honeymoon to Italy. I also bought the engagement ring. Dora finally spoke up, her voice dripping with venom. So you're going to pay me back for the dress, right? I can't return it. I almost laughed. Absolutely not. You can sell it or burn it, I don't care. As for my losses, I'll be selling the engagement ring to recoup some of the honeymoon cost. Her head snapped up, eyes flashing. You're going to sell the ring? After everything it was supposed to… Dora, stop. Isaac cut her off before she could build momentum. I leaned forward, keeping my voice calm. It was supposed to mean we were building a life together. You didn't just question marrying me. You systematically tore apart every aspect of our relationship for laughs. Dora opened her mouth to respond, but Isaac held up a hand. That's enough from both of you. Damien, that's more than fair. The finality in my voice seemed to hit her harder than anything else I'd said. There was nothing left to argue about. Isaac nodded slowly. That's fair, son. We finished our coffee in silence and left. I never spoke to Dora again. It's been 4 months now, and the dust has finally settled. The apartment feels like mine now. Clean, quiet, and stable. Yeah, stable. I'm embracing that word Dora treated like a curse. I've managed to piece together the aftermath through the occasional text from mutual friends and the general social media grapevine, and honestly, it's been better than any Netflix series. Dora's situation went from bad to worse pretty quickly. First, Isaac cut her off financially. Completely. No more daddy's credit card, no more bailouts, no more safety net. Word is he told her she was an adult who made adult decisions, so she could face adult consequences. Apparently, watching that live stream recording really opened his eyes to what his daughter had become. Then things got really interesting. Dora and Lexi had a massive blowout fight, where Dora blamed Lexi for everything. For going live? Yes, turns out it was all Lexi's idea. LOL. For encouraging her. For making her say all those things. Lexi wasn't having it and told Dora she was tired of being her scapegoat and unpaid therapist. She kicked Dora out of her apartment, leaving Dora scrambling to find somewhere to live. So now Dora's couch surfing between different friends, wearing out her welcome one living room at a time. Lexi signed up to be the fun-time maid of honor, not a full-time therapist for a bitter, broke roommate who treats her place like a crash pad and blames her for her own mistakes. Speaking of jobs, remember that email I sent to Dora's company? Well, it turns out HR departments take video evidence of employees confessing to workplace misconduct pretty seriously. Dora and Marcus both got fired within a week of my email. Apparently, the company retreat incident was already on their radar after some complaints, and my recording was just the evidence they needed to pull the trigger. Dora had to scramble to find a new job and ended up in customer service at an insurance company. From what I hear, she absolutely hates it. Marcus apparently bailed on her, blamed her for losing his job, and moved back to his parents' place in Ohio. Beautiful. She tells people I ruined her life, which is hilarious in a cosmic justice kind of way. I didn't ruin her life. I just stopped subsidizing it and let her face the consequences of her own choices. Turns out when you remove the financial safety net of a stable partner, lose your job for workplace misconduct, get cut off by your parents, and burn bridges with your friends, reality hits pretty hard. Lexi's reputation took a hit too. The live stream got screen recorded by multiple people and made the rounds through our social circle. She's no longer seen as the hilarious life of the party type, but more like the mean girl instigator who actively encouraged her best friend to torpedo her own future. I blocked the whole crew, Dora, Lexi, and Isabel on everything. Social media, phone, email, the whole digital exorcism. Isaac still checks on me sometimes, though. He doesn't bring up anything about his daughter, but we still both respect each other, and he still treats me like a son. 3 weeks ago, we grabbed some drinks and talked about work. Last week, I booked a flight to Italy. Remember that honeymoon we were supposed to take? I'm going solo. As for the ring, I sold it and got a decent price. Lost money overall, sure, but I gained something worth way more. Peace of mind. Oh, and I threw some of the cash at a new lit gaming monitor. The Asus VG249Q1A, aka the 24-inch weapon of choice. 165 Hz refresh rate, 1 millisecond response time, IPS panel with colors that hit like a punch to the face, and zero lag. Clean, sharp, built for domination. Best breakup W I've had. Story 5. This story is titled, My Girlfriend's Family Told Her to Leave Me for a Real Man. Now she's begging me for a second chance after I became successful and she is struggling. Hey everyone. Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Okay, Reddit, this is going to be a long one. Throwaway account for obvious reasons, but I need to get this story off my chest. Been holding on to it for years, and seeing my ex's recent social media meltdown finally gave me the push to share it. Buckle up, because this shit is wild. I grew up on the east side of Detroit. Just me and my mom after my old man decided cigarettes were more important than his family and never came back from his quick run to the store. Mom was a fucking warrior though. Worked as a nurse during the day, waitressed at night, and somehow still made it to most of my school stuff. We didn't have much, but she made sure I never felt poor, you know? Started working at my Uncle Mike's auto shop when I was 15. Not because he wanted to hire me. He actually tried to talk me out of it. Said I should focus on school. But I was tired of wearing hand-me-downs and seeing my mom exhausted all the time. Plus, I always had this thing for cars. Used to spend hours watching YouTube videos about engines and modifications, sketching designs in my beat-up notebooks during class. Uncle Mike's shop wasn't anything fancy, just a regular place that did decent work for decent people. But man, that shop was my Harvard. Every day after school, I'd head straight there, sweep floors, organize tools, whatever needed doing. The older mechanics started teaching me stuff when they saw I was actually interested. By 16, I could do an oil change with my eyes closed. By 17, I was helping with engine rebuilds. Here's where it gets interesting. One day, this dude rolls in with a clapped-out Mustang GT. Other shops had given up on it, said it wasn't worth fixing. But I saw potential. Spent 2 weeks staying late after my regular hours, researching forums, trying different things. Finally got it running better than new. Word spread after that. If you had a performance car that needed serious work, Uncle Mike's was the place to go. And I was the kid to ask for. Graduated high school with decent grades, thanks to mom riding my ass about homework. But college wasn't really in the cards. Went to trade school instead. Got all my certifications. That's where I met Sarah. Man, thinking back now, I should have seen the red flags from day one. She brought her BMW to the shop where I was doing my apprenticeship. Nothing special, just a 328. I heard Daddy bought her for her 20th birthday. Yeah, I know. But she was different from the usual rich girls we got. Actually seemed interested when I explained what was wrong with her car. Didn't act all grossed out by my grease-stained hands. Even laughed at my dumb car jokes. We started dating a few weeks later. Looking back, I think she saw me as her rebellion against her stuck-up family. You know how rich girls sometimes date the bad boy to piss off their parents? Except I wasn't even a bad boy. Just a working-class dude who was good with cars and had big dreams. Those first couple years were actually pretty great. She'd bring me lunch at the shop, hang out while I worked on projects. I started doing side jobs, saving up every penny I could. Had this vision of opening my own place. Not just another repair shop, but a high-end custom garage. The kind of place where people bring their Ferraris and Lamborghinis for serious work. Sarah seemed supportive, always talking about how she believed in me. Her family, though, holy fuck. Imagine every stereotype about old money snobs, multiply it by 10, and you're getting close. Her dad, Mr. Big Shot real estate developer, would ask me these condescending questions about my little car hobby at family dinners. Her mom would constantly bring up how her friend's son was doing so well at medical school, or how her cousin's husband just made partner at his law firm. But I kept my cool, focused on my goals. By 24, I had a solid reputation in the Detroit car scene. Started getting some high-end clients through word of mouth. Was even featured in a local car magazine for a custom restoration I did on a 67 Shelby GT 500. Things were looking up. Sarah and I had been together for 4 years at this point. We'd talked about marriage, kids, the whole thing. I was saving up for a ring, nothing fancy, but it was honest money I'd earned with my own 2 hands. Had this whole plan to propose once I secured the loan for my shop. Then everything went to shit. So every year, Sarah's family hosted this fancy charity gala for some Save the Whatever Foundation. Usually, I'd find an excuse to skip these things. Nothing more uncomfortable than being surrounded by trust fund babies who think changing their own oil is quirky and adventurous. But this time, Sarah insisted. Said it was important to her family that I be there. Red flag number 1 that I completely missed. I busted my ass that week to finish up a client's Porsche GT3 early so I could make it. Even bought a new suit. Nothing fancy, but definitely a step up from my usual JCPenney specials. Spent like 3 hours watching YouTube videos on how to tie a proper Windsor knot. Looking back, I probably tried too hard. But hey, I wanted to make Sarah proud. The gala was at this ridiculous mansion outside the city. We're talking fountain in the driveway, valet parking. Awkward moment when I recognized one of the valets. Dude used to work at Uncle Mike's. And enough crystal chandeliers to blind a small army. I felt out of place the second I walked in, but I was trying to play it cool. That's when James fucking Morrison III made his grand entrance. This douchebag pulls up in a brand new Porsche GT3 RS, the exact model I'd been working on all week. Except his was fresh off the showroom floor. Probably never even seen a speck of dust. He walks in wearing what I later found out was a $12,000 suit. Yeah, I looked it up after. Some fancy-ass watch that probably cost more than my yearly income. And that typical trust fund baby haircut that screams, "My daddy's lawyers have lawyers." Here's the real thing. Turns out his family owned Morrison Luxury Automobiles, this chain of high-end dealerships across 3 states. The same dealerships that would sometimes send us problem cars they couldn't fix. The irony was fucking painful. Sarah's mom practically sprinted across the room to greet him. "James, darling, we didn't know you'd be here." Total bullshit. Found out later they'd specifically invited him. Next thing I know, they're steering Sarah towards him, making sure they're seated together at dinner. During dinner, I had to sit there and listen to this guy brag about his latest business ventures, all funded by daddy's money, of course. Just acquired a new dealership in Chicago, he says, swirling his $1,000 wine like he's in some fancy commercial. Planning to expand into the exotic car market. It's really about understanding the luxury consumer mindset. I almost choked on my weird-ass tiny portion of whatever French dish they were serving. This guy wouldn't know real car work if it bit him in his designer-clad ass. But every time he opened his mouth, Sarah's parents were practically drooling. Her dad kept saying shit like, "That's the kind of forward thinking the industry needs," and "You really understand the business side of things." The whole time, I noticed Sarah getting quieter and quieter. Usually, she'd jump in, talk about some of the custom work I'd done, how I was planning to open my own shop. But that night, nothing. Just sat there nodding and laughing at James's terrible jokes about people who still buy American cars. That hurt more than any of the subtle digs about my background. After dinner, they had dancing. I'm not much of a dancer, unless you count the victory dance I do after successfully rebuilding a transmission. But I was trying. Then James cuts in, all smooth with his ballroom dancing skills probably learned at some fancy prep school. Sarah didn't even look back at me. The rest of the night was torture. Had to watch them dancing, talking, laughing. Her mom kept hovering around them, taking pictures, making comments about what a handsome couple they made. Meanwhile, I'm standing by the bar, drowning my frustration in overpriced drink that I couldn't really appreciate anyway. On the drive home, Sarah was different. Quiet. When I tried to joke about James being a walking stereotype, she didn't laugh like she usually would. Instead, she got defensive. "He's actually really smart about the industry," she said. "Maybe you could learn something about the business side from him." That's when I knew. Deep down, I think I knew right then that we were done. But like an idiot, I ignored it. Kept telling myself she was just impressed by the fancy party, that things would go back to normal once we were back in our regular routine. Over the next few weeks, Sarah started getting more involved with her family's social circle. Suddenly, she was too busy to hang out at the shop, always had some charity event or social function to attend. And somehow James was always there too. "Just coincidence," she'd say. "Yeah, right." The final straw? Found out she'd been having business lunches with James to discuss investment opportunities for my future shop. Apparently, he was interested in backing local talent. Sure, backing me right out of my relationship. It was a Tuesday when my life imploded. I remember because I just finished a complex transmission rebuild on a client's Mercedes AMG GT. Was feeling pretty good about myself. Had grease all over my hands, but a fat check in my pocket. The kind of day that usually meant celebration beer with the guys at the shop. Then Sarah texts, "Can we talk? I'll come by your place after work." Anyone who's ever gotten that text knows exactly what it means. But stupid me, I actually thought maybe she wanted to apologize for being distant lately. Rushed home, took the fastest shower of my life, even cleaned up my small apartment above the shop. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Paid for with honest work and long hours. She shows up looking like she stepped out of a magazine. Designer everything, hair done perfectly. Not a single thing out of place. Meanwhile, my hands still had motor oil under the nails that wouldn't come out no matter how hard I scrubbed. The contrast hit different that day. "I think we need to take a break," she starts. Classic opener, right? But then comes the real gut punch. I've been doing a lot of thinking about my future. I just sat there on my worn-out couch while she went through her obviously rehearsed speech. How she needs stability. How she's at a point in her life where she needs to think about her future seriously. How her family made her realize some things. Then, the kicker. She actually had the nerve to say this. "James helped me understand what I really want in life. Someone established, someone who can provide the lifestyle I'm accustomed to." You know what's fucked up? I didn't even get mad. Didn't yell or throw things. Just sat there feeling like someone had ripped my heart out through my throat. 4 years of memories flashing through my mind. All the late nights she spent at the shop with me. All the plans we made. All the times she said she believed in my dreams. "What about the shop?" I asked. "What about everything we planned?" She actually rolled her eyes. Fucking rolled her eyes. "Be realistic. Do you know how much capital it takes to compete with established luxury garages?" James says, I cut her off there. James says, "The guy who's never changed his own oil? That's who you're taking business advice from now?" She got this look on her face. Like I was some kid who just didn't understand how the real world works. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're so focused on the technical side, you don't understand the business reality. James has connections. He understands the luxury market. I stood up. Something in me just broke. "Get out." "What?" Get the fuck out of my apartment. Take your designer bags, your business reality, and your fucking James and get out. She looked shocked. Probably expected me to beg, to promise I'd change, to grovel for another chance. Instead, I walked to the door and held it open. She left without another word. 2 days later, 2 fucking days, she's all over Instagram. Pictures of her and James at some rooftop restaurant, his arm around her waist, both of them looking like they're shooting a commercial for rich people problems. Caption: sometimes life leads you exactly where you're meant to be. The worst part? The comments. All her rich friends saying shit like, OMG, finally. You guys are perfect together. And, this is what you deserve, girl. Like our entire relationship was just some embarrassing phase she went through. Then came the real shitstorm. Remember that Mercedes I'd just finished working on? Owner calls the next day, says the transmission's acting up again. I was so fucked up from the breakup. I must have missed something during reassembly. Had to eat the cost of fixing it. There went the fat check I was so proud of. More mistakes followed. Started drinking too much, showing up to work late, losing focus during jobs. Uncle Mike tried to talk to me about it, but I wasn't hearing it. Customers started going elsewhere. My savings for the shop? Draining fast between lost work and trying to drink away memories of Sarah. Lost 3 more big jobs in 2 weeks. Word gets around fast in the luxury car world. 1 mistake and your reputation takes a hit. 2 mistakes, people start looking elsewhere. Uncle Mike tried to help. He's a good dude. Kept giving me chances even when I was showing up late, hungover or both. But after I scratched a client's restored '69 Camaro because I was too drunk to notice a loose wrench on my workbench, he had to make a decision. Pulled me aside one Friday afternoon, pain all over his face. Listen, kid, I love you like a son, but I can't let you work on cars like this. You're gonna hurt yourself or someone else. Take some time, get your head straight. That night, I drank until I couldn't feel feelings anymore. Woke up on my bathroom floor to 3 missed calls from my landlord. Turns out I'd missed 2 months of rent on my apartment above the shop. Had been so fucked up I didn't even notice the late notices piling up. The real kick in the teeth? My savings account was almost empty. 4 years of carefully saving every penny for my dream shop. Gone in less than 2 months of self-destruction. Between the botched jobs I had to make right, the drinking, and trying to keep up appearances on the few dates I went on, like that was gonna help, I'd burned through almost everything. Had to move back in with my mom at 26. She didn't say anything when I showed up at her door with 2 duffel bags and a box of tools. Just hugged me and said dinner would be ready in an hour. But I saw her crying in the kitchen later that night. That shit destroyed me, knowing I was making my mom cry after everything she'd sacrificed to raise me right. Started taking any job I could find. Worked at AutoZone during the day. Delivered pizzas at night. But the worst? Had to take a job as a valet at this fancy steakhouse downtown. The same kind of place I used to dream about taking Sarah to once I made it. Then it happened. The moment that really broke me. I'm standing there in my valet uniform, cheap polyester pants, and a red vest that made me look like a rejected Christmas elf. Up pulls this familiar Porsche GT3 RS, that specific shade of shark blue that still haunts my dreams. Out steps James, looking like a fucking GQ model. And then, Sarah. She was wearing this red dress that probably cost more than my car. Designer everything. That tennis bracelet James had posted about giving her on Instagram. Yeah, I was still pathetically checking their socials. She saw me. I know she saw me. But she looked right through me like I was invisible. Just handed me her clutch with this practiced smile you give to the help. James, though. This motherfucker actually recognized me. Gets this little smirk on his face. Pulls out his wallet. Take good care of it, he says, handing me a $100 bill. I know how rough things have been for you lately. I wanted to shove that bill down his throat. Wanted to tell him that I'd forgotten more about cars than he'd ever know. Wanted to point out that daddy's money doesn't make you a man. But you know what I did? Took the fucking money. Because I needed it. Because my mom's AC was broken and she wouldn't let me pay to fix it. But I knew that 100 would cover the parts I needed. That night, after my shift, I sat in my car, the same Mustang I'd been so proud of building up from nothing, now showing its age and neglect. Pulled out my phone, looked at Sarah's Instagram. There they were, at the same restaurant I'd just valeted at. Perfect couple, perfect life, perfect fucking everything. 30 pounds of depression weight on my frame, cheap uniform reeking of other people's cars, that $100 bill burning a hole in my pocket. That was my rock bottom. But here's the thing about hitting bottom. Once you're there, you've got nothing left to lose. Drove home that night, walked straight past my mom watching her late night shows, into my old bedroom that still had my high school trophies on the wall. Stood there looking in the mirror for what felt like hours. The guy looking back? I didn't recognize him anymore. Hadn't shaved in weeks, dark circles under my eyes. Looked like a stranger wearing my face. That's when I made the decision. Capital T, capital D. Because sometimes you have to completely break before you can rebuild. And rebuild? That's exactly what I was about to do. That $100 bill James gave me? It changed everything, but not in the way he intended. The morning after the valet incident, I woke up at 4 a.m. Something inside me different. Walked to my bathroom, grabbed my mom's old digital scale, and faced the music. 242 pounds. I'd put on 47 pounds of pure depression weight in just a few months. Pulled out my phone, deleted every delivery app, unfollowed Sarah and James on everything, and downloaded a calorie tracking app instead. Then I did something I hadn't done since high school football. I put on my old running shoes and went for a run. Made it exactly 6 minutes before I thought my lungs would explode. But here's the thing about rock bottom. You've got nothing but time. No girlfriend to please, no social life to maintain, no reputation to protect anymore. Just hours and hours to rebuild yourself. So I made a plan. A real one. Not some bullshit New Year's resolution type deal. 4:30 a.m. Wake up, protein shake, learned about proper nutrition from YouTube. 5 a.m. Gym. 7 a.m. AutoZone shift. 4 p.m. Valet job. 11 p.m. Study business and marketing until I couldn't keep my eyes open. Rinse and repeat. Every single day. The first month was hell. My body hurt constantly. Living with my mom at 26 felt like the ultimate failure. The valet job was a constant reminder of everything I'd lost. But I kept looking at that $100 bill on my wall. Kept thinking about James's smirk. Used that anger, that humiliation, as fuel. By month 3, things started changing. Down 25 pounds, started seeing muscle definition again. The regular customers at AutoZone began asking what I was doing differently. But the biggest change was happening in my mind. See, working at AutoZone had this unexpected benefit. I got to talk to every kind of car guy in Detroit, from suburban dads working on their weekend projects to serious collectors maintaining their classics. Started noticing patterns in what they complained about, what services they couldn't find, what they wished existed. The high-end guys especially. They kept bitching about how the dealerships, like James's family's chain, were overcharging for basic work and screwing up the complex stuff. The more I listened, the more I saw a gap in the market. These guys wanted someone who understood both the mechanics and the luxury market. Remember that warehouse I mentioned earlier? Found it during a valet shift. This massive abandoned building in Corktown, right between the wealthy suburbs and downtown. Previous owner went bankrupt during COVID. The place was a mess. Broken windows, graffiti everywhere, probably some questionable residents in the corners. But holy shit, the bones were perfect. High ceilings, great location, massive doors that could fit any size vehicle. During my breaks, I'd sit in my car outside that building, running numbers, sketching layouts, planning. The asking price was way out of my league, $400,000. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Then came the breakthrough. One night, I'm valeting this beat-up Rolls-Royce Phantom. Yeah, that's a thing. Owner's this old-school Detroit businessman, Mr. Thompson. Car's making this weird noise. He's complained to 3 different dealerships, spent thousands, problems still there. I hear it and immediately know what it is. Classic air suspension issue these models have. Tell him my diagnosis. He's skeptical but desperate. Says I can look at it after my shift if I want. Spent 2 hours in that parking lot, fixing his car with basic tools from my trunk. When I finish, he's shocked. Starts asking about my background, my plans. Told him everything. About the warehouse I wanted to buy. About my vision for a different kind of luxury garage. About how the current market was underserving guys like him. Must have talked for another hour. Next day he calls. Wants to meet at his office. I show up in my best clothes, which wasn't saying much at that point. Hands still stained with motor oil despite scrubbing them raw. He has a proposal. He'll help secure the loan for the warehouse, plus $200,000 for renovations and equipment. In return, he wants 25% of the business and first priority service for his car collection. But here's the catch. I had 3 months to prove I could run a business. Had to create a complete business plan, marketing strategy, everything. Oh, and I had to get back in good standing with the luxury car community. No pressure, right? You know what I did? Grabbed every free business course online I could find. Spent my valet shifts studying the high-end clients, how they talked, what they valued, what made them trust a business. Used my AutoZone connections to start rebuilding my reputation in the car community. Called in favors from every mechanic I'd ever helped. Lost another 20 pounds. Started dressing better. Not fancy, but professional. Clean, pressed clothes, even for the valet job. Changed how I talked, how I carried myself. Not pretending to be something I wasn't, but becoming the best version of who I could be. 3 months later, I walked into Mr. Thompson's office a different man. Physically, mentally, professionally, everything had changed. Slapped down a 100-page business plan that I'd rewritten 12 times. Had 5 luxury car owners ready to sign maintenance contracts. Had a complete renovation plan for the warehouse. He read through everything, looked at me for a long moment, then opened his desk drawer, pulled out a set of keys, the keys to the warehouse. He'd already bought it, said he knew after week 2 that I was going to make it happen, just wanted to see how far I'd push myself. That night, standing in my soon-to-be shop, covered in dust and cobwebs, I finally took that $100 bill down from my wall. Not because I was over it, but because I needed room for the building permit that was going to change everything. Renovating that warehouse was like bringing a dead car back to life. You've got to strip everything down to bare metal before you can rebuild it properly. First day, I walked in as the owner, found 3 homeless guys living in the corner office, and enough pigeons to start a racing team. The roof leaked in 17 different places. The concrete floor was cracked worse than my ex's moral compass. But man, there's something therapeutic about destroying things to rebuild them better. Spent 2 weeks just demolishing interior walls and clearing out decades of industrial crap. Mr. Thompson thought I was crazy for doing the demo work myself, but I needed this. Needed to feel every piece of this place transform under my hands. Remember that business plan I mentioned? Called for 3 months of renovation before opening. We did it in 7 weeks. I'm talking 18-hour days, sleeping on a cot in what would become the customer lounge, eating nothing but protein bars and gas station coffee. My mom would bring me clean clothes and actual food, telling me I was working too hard. But she didn't understand. This wasn't work. This was redemption. The floor ended up costing almost $50,000 to do right. Special epoxy coating that could handle everything from oil spills to Bugatti tire marks. The lifts? Another $100,000 for the good stuff. None of that cheap hydraulic nonsense that breaks down every other month. Every dollar spent was an investment in proving them wrong. Opening day was nothing fancy. No big ceremony, no ribbon cutting. Just opened the doors at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday. Had exactly 5 appointments scheduled, all Mr. Thompson's connections. By 8 a.m., had my first real test. Rolls-Royce Cullinan rolls in, owner complaining about a weird noise in the suspension. Other shops had quoted him $15,000 for a complete system replacement. Took me 2 hours to diagnose and fix a loose actuator that cost $300 in parts. The look on his face when I handed him the bill? Priceless. He called 3 friends before he even left the parking lot. That's when things started moving. Word spread through the luxury car community like wildfire. This new shop in Corktown, guy who runs it actually knows what he's doing. Doesn't bullshit you. Fair prices for quality work. By week 3, we were booked solid 2 weeks out. Hired my first 2 mechanics end of month 1. Both guys I knew from my Uncle Mike's shop days who'd been wanting to get into high-end work. Trained them myself, made sure they understood my standards. No cutting corners, no bullshit, no overcharging just because the client has money. Then came the game changer. Remember that Ferrari restoration I mentioned way back? Owner was this big shot in the classic car world. Brings in his 1962 Ferrari 250 GTE. Previous shop had totally botched the engine rebuild. Wanted another $40,000 to fix their mistakes. Spent a week rebuilding that engine myself, staying up till 3 a.m. studying original Ferrari manuals. When I fired it up for the first time, that V12 singing like it just rolled out of Maranello. Man, I actually cried. Owner was so happy he featured us in his car club newsletter. Next thing you know, we're getting calls from collectors across the country. 6 months in, had to hire 3 more mechanics. Built a reputation for being the shop that could fix the impossible problems. The ones other shops, including certain dealership chains, couldn't figure out. Started getting calls from exotic car owners tired of dealing with dealership bullshit. Here's where it gets good. Started noticing a pattern. Lot of complaints about Morrison Luxury Automobiles, James's daddy's chain. Their service department was slipping, charging crazy prices for basic work, messing up complex jobs. Why? Because James had convinced his old man to cut costs on technician training, figuring rich people would pay whatever they charged anyway. 1 year in, we had a 3-month waiting list. Had to start turning down regular cars to focus on exotics and classics. Expanded to the building next door, doubled our workspace. Installed a specialized Ferrari diagnostic system that cost more than my first house would have. Then one day, this familiar Porsche GT3 RS pulls up outside. not for service, just parked there while its owner went to the new coffee shop across the street. Shark blue paint looking a little dull now. Brake rotors showing heavy wear. Could tell from the sound it needed a carbon cleaning bad. But the owner? Hadn't figured out who I was yet. See, I'd stayed pretty low-key. No social media presence, no advertising. All word of mouth. Local business magazines had done some pieces on the shop, but I always declined photos. Wasn't about me, was about the work. But now, watching that Porsche sit there, knowing what was coming, man, karma was about to call in her markers. Remember that tired-looking Porsche GT3 RS I mentioned? 2 weeks after I saw it outside my shop, it finally showed up as a customer. Not with James driving. He'd sent one of his dealership's porters. Apparently, the car was running rough, and their techs couldn't figure out why. The porter handed me the keys without having any idea who I was. Did a full inspection while the porter waited. Car was a mess. Carbon buildup, worn brake pads, transmission fluid that probably hadn't been changed since it left the factory. Classic signs of an owner who cares more about the badge than the machine. Wrote up a full estimate, handed it to the porter. Total came to about $18,000 worth of work needed. Porter called James right there in my office. I could hear James through the phone. That's ridiculous. Our service department said it just needs a tune-up. Made my day when the porter replied, "Sir, you told me to take it to the best shop in Detroit." This is that shop. James shows up an hour later, probably expecting to throw his weight around. Walks into my office without recognizing me at first. I'd changed a lot in 3 years. Gained 30 pounds of muscle, grew a well-maintained beard, wearing a tailored suit instead of mechanic's overalls. The moment of recognition? Pure fucking gold. His face went through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. Shock, disbelief, anger, fear, and finally, respect. Because he knew. One look around my shop told him everything he needed to know. 6 high-end cars being worked on, 3 Ferrari certificates on the wall, and a waiting list so long we had to stop taking new clients. How? He started to ask. Hard work, I cut him off. Something daddy's money can't buy. He tried to save face, started talking about how we should collaborate. His dealership chain was struggling. Turned out cutting corners on service wasn't such a great long-term strategy, but I wasn't interested in helping the guy who took everything from me. Your car will be ready in 2 weeks, I told him. Standard payment terms, 50% upfront. The best part? He paid. Had no choice, really. His reputation was on the line, and his dealership couldn't fix the car properly. But that was just the appetizer. Main course came about a month later when I got an interesting email. Morrison Luxury Automobiles was looking to sell some of their locations. Turns out their service department's reputation had tanked so bad, they were losing millions. High-end clients were leaving in droves, many of them coming to us. Remember Mr. Thompson, my mentor and investor? Turns out he sits on the board of several banks that held the Morrison family's business loans. One phone call from him, and suddenly those loans were being reviewed. Closely. The real cherry on top? Sarah showed up at my shop unannounced one afternoon. She looked different. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by regular retail stuff. That perfect rich girl polish had faded. Turned out James's family's financial troubles had hit home. No more unlimited credit cards, no more luxury shopping sprees. I made a mistake, she said, standing in my office. The same office where I'd once dreamed of building something great. I never should have left. You were the real thing, and I was too blind to see it. Just then, Emma walked in. My girlfriend of 2 years. Former professional race car driver, now runs her own performance parts manufacturing company. She's everything Sarah pretended to be. Smart, driven, genuine. The look on Sarah's face when Emma kissed me hello? Better than any revenge I could have planned. The mistake wasn't leaving, I told Sarah. The mistake was thinking I needed you to succeed. Today, my shop is the go-to place for exotic cars in the Midwest. We've got a 6-month waiting list, 3 locations, and a reputation for excellence that money can't buy. James's family had to sell most of their dealerships. Karma's a bitch when you build your success on bullshit. Last I heard, he's working as a used car salesman in Ohio. Sarah? She's still with him, but not by choice. Turns out when you build your whole life around someone else's money, it's hard to walk away when that money disappears. Her Instagram these days is all blessed with what matters posts. You know, the kind people make when they're trying to convince themselves they're happy. Me? I just signed a deal to open 2 more locations. Emma and I are getting married next spring, having the ceremony in the first warehouse I renovated. Mr. Thompson's going to be my best man. That $100 bill James gave me when I was a valet? It's framed in my office right next to last year's Entrepreneur of the Year award. Sometimes I think about that night as a valet, watching them walk into that restaurant like they owned the world. Everything I've built since then, it's not about revenge. It's about proving that real success comes from genuine passion, hard work, and never letting someone else define your worth. The empire I built, it's not built on family connections or trust funds. It's built on stripped knuckles, late nights, and a genuine love for what I do. And that's something no one can ever take away. Edit. Holy shit, this post blew up. Rip my inbox. Edit 2. For everyone asking, yes, Emma's real. No, she's not on Reddit. And yes, she's laughing at all your comments about her being out of my league. Edit 3. Stop trying to guess which dealerships were Morrison's. The car community's small enough without starting drama. Edit 4. Thanks for all the awards, but if you want to spend money, spend it on tools and education. That's what really builds empires. Final update. This got way bigger than I expected. For all the young guys in similar situations, focus on yourself. Success isn't about proving others wrong, it's about proving yourself right. Build something real, and karma takes care of the rest. And to the guy who asked if I'd do it all again? In a heartbeat. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to realize what you're capable of building. Story 6. This story is titled, My Parents Gave Everything to My Golden Sibling, Then Demanded I Fund Their Retirement. I refused and cut ties. Hi everyone. Before we dive in, a quick favor. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and make sure you never miss out on amazing video. Alright, let's get started. Okay, so here's some backstory to kick things off. Growing up, I always knew my brother Alex was the favorite. You know how some families try to pretend they treat their kids equally, even if it's obvious they don't? Mine didn't even bother hiding it. Alex was their golden boy from day one. He could do no wrong, even when he clearly did everything wrong. For some context, Alex is 2 years younger than me. I'm 34 now, so he's 32, but it's like he's never aged past 16. He's the kind of guy who peaked in high school, or at least he would have if he'd actually graduated. He dropped out halfway through junior year because he didn't like being told what to do. That was always his excuse for everything. Jobs, school, relationships. It didn't matter. If someone had any kind of authority over him, he was out. Meanwhile, I did everything right. I studied hard, got good grades, and worked part-time during high school to save up for college. My parents owned a small landscaping business, a decent little setup with a handful of employees. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept the lights on and food on the table. They'd make me help out during the summer, trimming hedges, mowing lawns, and lugging equipment around. I hated it, but I did it because I knew it was temporary. I had bigger plans. Alex, on the other hand, he'd disappear halfway through the day, saying he didn't feel like working, or that it was too hot outside. My parents would just shrug it off. He's still figuring things out, they'd say. Figuring things out? He wasn't even trying. After high school, things only got worse. While I was working 2 part-time jobs and taking night classes to get my degree, Alex was bouncing between temp gigs and living at home rent-free. He'd get hired at some retail job or delivery service, and within weeks he'd quit or get fired because he didn't like being bossed around. It got to the point where my parents stopped asking what happened when he came home unemployed again. They'd just sigh and say, he'll find something that works for him eventually. Of course, eventually never came. By the time I graduated college and started working as a financial analyst, Alex was still lounging at home, borrowing money from our parents to start his own business or invest in a great opportunity. Nothing ever came of those investments. I wish I could say I was surprised by how much they coddled him, but it had been this way since we were kids. If I got a B on a test, they'd lecture me about not trying hard enough. If Alex failed a class, they'd blame the teacher for not understanding his learning style. If I wanted new clothes, I had to save up for them. If Alex wanted new sneakers, my parents would hand over their credit card like it was nothing. It was like we were living in 2 completely different households. Still, I tried to keep the peace. I'd go over for family dinners, listen to my mom gush about how smart Alex was, despite all evidence to the contrary, and nod along to my dad's stories about how Alex was so close to landing a big opportunity. It was frustrating, but I didn't want to be the guy who constantly stirred the pot. I figured as long as they weren't dragging me into it, I could just let them live in their little bubble. But even then, there were cracks. Like the time I overheard my mom telling a family friend that I didn't need as much attention because I was self-sufficient. Or the time my dad flat out said that Alex had more potential than me because he was creative. Creative? The guy couldn't even stick to a basic budget. But whatever. I let it go because honestly, what was the point? By the time I hit my late 20s, I'd started to distance myself from them. I wasn't cutting them off or anything. I just had my own life. I'd bought a modest little house, built up some savings, and was starting to feel like all my hard work was finally paying off. Meanwhile, Alex was still living at home, mooching off our parents and complaining about how hard life was. The crazy part? My parents were fine with it. They even defended it. He's just taking some time to find his path, my mom would say. Not everyone figures it out right away. Sure, Mom. He's been figuring it out for over a decade now. But again, I kept my mouth shut. It wasn't worth the fight. Looking back, I think a part of me always knew where this was heading. My parents' favoritism wasn't just about emotional support. I just didn't realize how far they'd take it until last year. That's when everything came crashing down. To give you some backstory, family dinners with my parents were something I endured, not something I looked forward to. Growing up, I'd learned that skipping one wasn't worth the guilt trip that followed. So, once every couple of weeks, I'd head over to their place, make small talk, eat whatever my mom made, and remind myself that this was just part of being a good son. Dinners followed the same routine every time. My mom would call me earlier in the day to remind me to come, even though I'd never actually forgotten. I'd show up, greet my dad, who was usually sitting in his recliner watching sports or some old action movie, and then chat with my mom while she finished cooking. Alex was almost always already there, sitting at the table or on the couch, scrolling through his phone like he had absolutely nothing better to do. Which, to be fair, he probably didn't. The food was always solid. My mom was a great cook, but it didn't make up for the awkward conversation. Most of the time, they'd start off harmless enough. My dad would complain about traffic or the weather, and my mom would give me updates about random people I barely remembered from childhood. But no matter where the conversation started, it always found its way back to Alex. Alex has been so busy with the business, my mom would say, like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. Yeah, he's been coming up with some great ideas, my dad would add, nodding like they were talking about some kind of entrepreneurial genius. I'd just sit there, chewing my food and pretending to be interested. I knew better than to argue. No matter how much evidence there was to the contrary, my parents were fully committed to the idea that Alex was turning things around. Once, I made the mistake of asking for specifics. What kind of ideas? I asked, genuinely curious about what Alex could possibly be contributing. Well, my mom started, glancing at Alex, who was suddenly way too interested in his plate. He's been talking about expanding into commercial contracts. You know, office parks, malls, bigger projects. Right, Alex mumbled, not looking up. That's ambitious, I said carefully. I wanted to ask how they planned to pull that off when Alex couldn't even show up to residential jobs on time, but I bit my tongue. Every once in a while, my parents would try to drag me into the conversation. You're good with numbers, Daniel, my dad said one night, out of nowhere. You should take a look at the books sometime. Maybe give Alex some pointers. Dad, I don't think that's a good idea, I replied. Why not? You could help him out. Your family. I glanced at Alex, who was still glued to his phone, and shook my head. I've got my own job to worry about. Besides, Alex seems to have it under control. That shut my dad up, but I could tell he wasn't happy about it. The thing about these dinners was that they weren't just about eating together. They were about keeping up appearances. My parents wanted me there because it made everything seem normal, like we were this big, happy family. But the reality was far from it. Alex barely acknowledged me most of the time, and when he did, it was usually to make some snarky comment about how I thought I was better than him, because I had a degree and a steady job. My parents, of course, never called him out on it. They'd just sit there, pretending not to notice, or worse, laugh along like he was being funny. One time I brought up something about my work, a project I'd been proud of, and Alex immediately jumped in with, "Must be nice sitting at a desk all day while other people do the real work." I stared at him, trying to decide if it was even worth responding. "Yeah, Alex," I said finally. "Sitting at a desk is exhausting. You should try it sometime." My dad cleared his throat, and my mom quickly changed the subject. "Alex has been thinking about hiring more people for the business," she said, as if that was some kind of groundbreaking news. "Really?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Well, not yet," Alex cut in. "It's just an idea for now." I wanted to laugh. Of course, it was just an idea. Everything with Alex was just an idea. After dinner, we'd usually sit in the living room for a bit. Alex would sprawl out on the couch, looking bored. I'd sit there, sipping my coffee, counting down the minutes until it was socially acceptable to leave. It wasn't that I hated my family. I didn't. But being there felt like stepping into a time machine. No matter how much my life had changed, nothing about that house or the people in it ever seemed to evolve. It was the same conversations, the same dynamics, the same expectations. They still saw me as the responsible one, the one who didn't need help, the one who could always figure things out on his own. And Alex? He was still the golden boy who needed all their attention and support, no matter how little he deserved it. By the time I left, I always felt drained. It was like the house sucked all the energy out of me. I'd get in my car, crank up the radio, and take a deep breath, reminding myself that I didn't have to live in that world anymore. But no matter how far I distanced myself, I knew I'd be back in a couple of weeks, sitting at that same table, listening to the same conversations, and pretending everything was fine. So, it was supposed to be just another Sunday dinner. I didn't expect much. Same bland conversations, same forced family bonding. I figured I'd show up, eat my mom's lasagna, endure an hour or two of Alex's smirking and my dad's grumbling about the state of the economy, and head home. Easy enough, right? But this time was different. The atmosphere felt weird from the moment I walked in. My mom was unusually fidgety, and my dad was sitting at the table instead of his usual spot in the recliner. Even Alex looked uncomfortable, which was rare since he usually parked himself in front of the TV like he owned the place. "Hey, what's going on?" I asked, dropping my keys on the counter. "Nothing, nothing," my mom said quickly, her voice a little too high-pitched to be convincing. "Dinner's almost ready. Go ahead and sit down." I frowned but did as she said, taking my usual seat at the table. My dad cleared his throat and glanced at my mom, who gave him a little nod. Alex, sitting across from me, was suddenly very interested in his phone. "All right," my dad said, his tone more serious than usual. "We've got something to talk about." Here we go, I thought. I had no idea what was coming, but it couldn't be good. My dad didn't do serious talks unless he was about to complain about something or deliver bad news. "We've been thinking a lot about the future," he continued, his hands clasped on the table like he was about to deliver a corporate presentation. "Your mom and I aren't getting any younger, and we want to make sure everything's in order." "Okay," I said slowly, glancing between them. My mom jumped in. "You know, the business, the house, our savings. We've been trying to figure out the best way to transition things." Transition? That word immediately set off alarm bells in my head. They'd never talked about this kind of stuff before. At least, not with me. I figured they had some kind of vague retirement plan, but I'd never pressed them on it because, frankly, it wasn't my business. My dad nodded. "We've made a decision. We're going to start stepping back from the business, and we've decided to put everything in Alex's name." I blinked. "Everything? The house, the business, the savings," my mom clarified, like she was explaining it to a child. "It just makes the most sense." I stared at them, waiting for them to crack a smile or say, "Just kidding," but they didn't. They were completely serious. "Wait," I said, trying to process what I'd just heard. "You're giving everything to Alex?" "Yes," my dad said, like it was the most logical decision in the world. "Why?" My mom tilted her head, giving me that pitying look she'd perfected over the years. "Honey, you don't need it. You've got a good job, a house. Alex needs the support more." "Support," I repeated, the word tasting bitter in my mouth. "You mean the guy who couldn't even graduate high school and hasn't held down a job for more than 6 months at a time?" My dad sighed, already looking annoyed. "That's not fair, Daniel. Alex has had a harder time finding his footing. We just want to give him a chance to succeed." "A chance to succeed," I said, shaking my head. "At what? Blowing through all your money and running the business into the ground?" "Daniel," my mom said, her tone sharp, "that's enough." "No, seriously," I said, my voice rising despite myself. "You're giving him everything. And I get what exactly? A pat on the back for being responsible?" "You don't need anything from us," my dad said, his voice firm. "You've always been independent. Alex, on the other hand, could use a little extra help." A little extra help? They were handing over their entire life's work, their house, and their savings to a guy who couldn't even manage his own phone bill. It was beyond insulting. It was infuriating. I looked at Alex, who had finally put his phone down and was watching me with this smug little smirk. He didn't say anything, but he didn't have to. The look on his face said it all. "Sucks to be you, bro." "Unbelievable," I muttered, pushing my chair back. "Daniel, please," my mom said, her voice suddenly shaky. "Don't make this into a fight. We're not trying to punish you. We just think this is what's best for the family." "Best for the family?" I repeated, laughing bitterly. "No, this is what's best for Alex. And when he screws it all up, which we all know he will, then what? You'll come to me to fix it? That's not fair," my dad said again, his jaw tightening. "Alex is capable. He's been stepping up lately, and we trust him to handle this." "Stepping up?" I snapped. "By showing up to work twice a week and scrolling through his phone the rest of the time?" "Yeah, sounds real responsible." Alex finally decided to speak. "You're just jealous," he said, his voice dripping with fake confidence. "Just because they trust me more doesn't mean you have to throw a tantrum." I laughed in disbelief. "Trust you? That's a good one, Alex. Trust has nothing to do with this. They're just too blind to see you for who you really are. That's enough, my mom said, slamming her hand on the table. It wasn't often that she raised her voice, but when she did, it usually worked. Not this time. No, it's not enough, I said, standing up. You've made your choice, fine. Give everything to Alex. Daniel, please, my dad said, his tone softer now. Don't walk away like this. We're still a family. I shook my head. A family? No, Dad. A family supports each other. This question mark. This is just favoritism, plain and simple. Without another word, I grabbed my keys and left. I could hear my mom calling after me as I walked out the door, but I didn't turn back. That drive home was one of the longest of my life. My hands were shaking, and my mind was racing. Part of me couldn't believe what had just happened, but another part of me wasn't surprised at all. They'd always favored Alex. This was just the natural conclusion of years of coddling and enabling. Still, knowing it didn't make it easier to accept. By the time I got home, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to let them drag me into this mess. They wanted Alex to have everything? Fine. But they weren't going to use me as their safety net when it all went sideways. Not this time. After that dinner, I kept my distance. Not in a dramatic, you'll never hear from me again kind of way, but in a quiet, I need some space before I lose my mind way. I didn't block their numbers or anything, but I wasn't answering their calls either. They didn't try that hard to reach out, so I figured we were all okay with the silence. In the first few weeks, it was almost peaceful. No forced small talk, no sitting through another round of Alex's so great stories. I had my evenings back to myself and my weekends free of the emotional drain that came with visiting them. But that peace came with a side of frustration. I kept asking myself the same questions. How could they not see how unfair this is? Do they really think Alex is capable of running a business? What's going to happen when it all falls apart? I wanted to let it go, but the anger just sat there, simmering beneath the surface. It wasn't just about the business or the house or even the money. It was about the principle. They'd spent my whole life treating Alex like he was the center of the universe, and now they'd taken it to the extreme. They didn't just play favorites. They handed him their entire legacy on a silver platter and didn't even pretend to include me in the decision. A few weeks later, I got an unexpected update on the situation. I was grabbing coffee with an old friend from high school, Mike, who still lived in the area. We were catching up when he brought up my parents' business. Hey, how's the landscaping company doing? He asked, stirring his coffee. I heard Alex is running it now. Yeah, I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. They handed everything over to him. Mike raised an eyebrow. That's interesting. I ran into Tony the other day. You remember Tony, right? He's been working for your parents forever. Yeah, I know Tony, I said. What did he say? Mike leaned in a little, like he was about to share some juicy gossip. Apparently, things aren't going great. Tony said Alex has been making some, questionable decisions. Taking on jobs they can't handle, underpaying the crew, stuff like that. I sighed. Figures. He's never been good at thinking things through. Mike nodded. Tony said your dad's still handling a lot of the day-to-day stuff, but it's clear Alex is in over his head. Sounds about right, I muttered. Man, that sucks, Mike said. Your parents worked so hard to build that business. Yeah, I said, feeling the frustration bubble up again. And now they're letting Alex run it into the ground. Hearing that confirmed what I'd already suspected. Alex wasn't capable of running a business, and my parents were too blinded by their favoritism to admit it. But as much as it annoyed me, I wasn't about to step in. The business had been my parents' pride and joy for decades. They'd poured their blood, sweat, and tears into it, and now they were watching Alex fumble his way through. Part of me wanted to call them and say, I told you so. But another part of me just felt sad. Not for them, but for the business, and all the employees who were probably scrambling to keep things afloat. After that conversation, I decided to keep my distance even more. But it didn't take long for the cracks to start showing. A few weeks later, I got a voicemail from my mom. Her tone was light, but I could hear the underlying tension. Hi, honey, it's Mom. Just checking in to see how you're doing. Give me a call when you have a chance. Love you. I didn't call her back. Not because I didn't care, but because I knew exactly what she wanted to talk about. In the weeks that followed, I got a few more voicemails and texts from my mom, all with the same cheerful tone masking what I knew was desperation. Alex, of course, didn't reach out. Why would he? He was probably still riding high on the illusion that he was the big boss, even as everything crumbled around him. For the first time in my life, I felt completely disconnected from my family. And you know what? It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. I didn't miss the drama. I didn't miss the constant feeling of being second best. I didn't miss the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. After weeks of ignoring their calls and texts, I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd finally gotten the hint. But my parents were persistent. especially when it came to cleaning up Alex's messes. The next escalation came when my mom sent me a long, rambling email. Daniel, it began, I know you're upset, but we're really struggling right now. Alex has been under so much pressure, and things just haven't worked out the way we hoped. He's trying his best, but it's a lot for him to handle. Your dad and I are doing what we can, but we're stretched thin. Can you please just talk to us? We need your advice. We need you. I wasn't the one who had put them in this position. They had chosen Alex, given him everything, without so much as a conversation with me. And now, when things were falling apart, they expected me to swoop in and save the day? That wasn't my job. A few days later, I ran into one of their former employees, Jeff, at the post office. Jeff had worked for my parents for years, but he'd left the company not long after Alex took over. Hey, Daniel, he said, spotting me in line. Got a second? I nodded, bracing myself for whatever he was about to say. You heard what's been going on with the business? He asked, lowering his voice a little. Bits and pieces, I said. What's the latest? Jeff shook his head. Man, it's bad. Alex has no clue what he's doing. He's been taking on jobs that are way too big for the crew to handle, and he's underpricing everything just to get work. They're barely breaking even on most projects. Sounds about right, I said, keeping my tone neutral. And that's not even the worst of it, Jeff continued. He's been butting heads with everyone. Good guys, too. People who've been loyal to your parents for years. A lot of them have quit. It's a skeleton crew now. Why am I not surprised? I muttered. Jeff nodded. I hate to say it, but I don't think the company's going to last much longer if things keep going like this. Later that evening, I got another call from my mom. This time, I answered. Daniel, she said, her voice equal parts relief and frustration. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. Why haven't you called us back? Because I know what you're going to ask me, and the answer is still no, I said, cutting straight to the point. Daniel, please, she said, her voice cracking. We're in a really tough spot. Alex is struggling, and we don't know what to do. The business is falling apart. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, though my tone probably made it clear I wasn't all that sorry. You have to understand, she continued, ignoring my lack of enthusiasm. We just wanted to give Alex a chance. We thought he'd grow into the role. Well, he didn't, I said bluntly. And now you're dealing with the consequences of that decision. It's not like that. It's exactly like that, I interrupted. I'm not doing it, Mom. I'm done. She didn't say anything for a moment, and I could hear her trying to hold back tears. Finally, she said, I just wish you'd understand. We love you both, Daniel. We never meant to make you feel like you weren't important. You didn't mean to, I said, shaking my head. But you did. Over the next few weeks, I started hearing from other people, relatives, family friends, even some old neighbors. Apparently, my parents had been telling everyone who'd listen about how difficult things were and how I was refusing to help. One of my aunts called me, launching straight into a guilt trip. Daniel, what's wrong with you? She said, her tone sharp. Your parents are struggling, and you're just sitting back and letting it happen? That's not how family works. They didn't know this would happen, she continued. They were just trying to do what was best for him, and now they need you. You're really going to turn your back on them? Yes, I said simply. What kind of son does that? She snapped. The kind who's tired of being treated like a backup plan, I replied before hanging up. Meanwhile, the situation with the business kept deteriorating. Alex, true to form, refused to take responsibility for any of it. According to the people I talked to, he blamed the employees, the clients, the economy, anything and everything except himself. My parents, of course, were still defending him. He's doing the best he can, my mom said in one voicemail. It's just a tough time for everyone. But it wasn't just a tough time. It was a disaster. The business was hemorrhaging money, and my parents were on the verge of losing everything. And even then, they couldn't admit they'd made a mistake. One Saturday morning, they came unannounced, just as I was settling into my usual weekend routine. A cup of coffee, a quiet house, and no immediate obligation. The knock at the door was sharp and deliberate. The kind of knock that tells you whoever's there isn't just dropping by for a friendly visit. I opened the door to find my parents standing on the porch. My dad was stiff, his expression a mix of irritation and exhaustion, while my mom was fidgeting with her purse strap, her lips pressed into a tight line. For a moment, I thought about shutting the door and pretending I wasn't home, but I knew they wouldn't leave without saying whatever they'd come to say. Can we come in? My dad asked, though it wasn't really a question. I stepped aside, letting them in. They didn't wait for an invitation to sit. My dad dropped into the armchair like he owned the place, and my mom perched on the edge of the couch, her hands still gripping her purse like a lifeline. There was an awkward silence as I stood there, leaning against the wall, waiting for them to get to the point. I didn't have to wait long. We need to talk, my dad said, his voice firm and heavy with disappointment. Frankly, Daniel, we're disappointed in you. I blinked, caught off guard by the bluntness. Disappointed? Yes, he said. We've been reaching out to you for weeks, trying to get you to see reason, and you've ignored us. You're turning your back on your family, and that's not how we raised you. My mom nodded along, her expression mournful. We expected better from you, Daniel. You've always been the dependable one, the one we could count on. But now, when we need you the most, you're just refusing to help. I felt a wave of disbelief wash over me. They weren't here to apologize or even to discuss things rationally. They were here to guilt me into submission. We thought we raised a better man than this, my dad continued, his tone growing sharper. After everything we've done for you, after all the sacrifices we've made, this is how you repay us? By ignoring our calls and leaving us to deal with this mess alone? They went on, listing every supposed sacrifice they'd ever made for me, every time they'd been there for me. My mom brought up how they'd paid for my childhood activities, supported me through tough times, and given me a roof over my head. My dad talked about the long hours he worked to provide for the family, how he'd hoped I'd step up when the time came. And now, my mom added, her voice trembling, you're not just turning your back on Alex, you're turning your back on us. We're getting older, Daniel. We can't keep working forever. We thought you'd understand that you'd help take care of us when the time came. But instead, you're leaving us with nothing. That was it. That was the real reason they were here. They weren't just upset that I wasn't helping Alex. They were upset that I wasn't stepping in to take care of them too. They'd assumed I'd be their retirement plan, their safety net, the one who would shoulder their burdens when they couldn't anymore. I let them talk. I didn't argue, didn't defend myself, didn't say a word. I just stood there, arms crossed, listening as they laid all their expectations at my feet, as if it were my fault that things hadn't gone the way they'd planned. When they finally ran out of steam, my dad leaned back in the chair, crossing his arms. You've made it pretty clear where you stand, he said, his tone cold. And it's disappointing, to say the least. My mom sniffled, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue she'd pulled from her purse. We don't deserve this, Daniel. I took a deep breath, letting their words settle in the air between us. And then, slowly, I began to speak. You're right, I said. You don't deserve this. You don't deserve to be let into my house nor my life again. You deserve to deal with the consequences of your own actions, just like everyone else. You decided Alex was the one who needed support, the one who deserved the business, the house, the savings. Let me tell you something. You deserve getting help from him. And now, look at you. You're coming to me to clean it up. That's not how this works. My dad opened his mouth to respond, but I held up a hand to stop him. You don't get to stand here and tell me you're disappointed in me when you've spent my entire life treating me like I don't exist. You don't get to guilt me into helping you after ignoring me for years, after making it clear that Alex was the one who mattered. You made your choices, and now you get to live with them. My mom started crying, big, ugly sobs that filled the room. My dad's expression hardened, but I could see the defeat in his eyes. They'd come here to shame me, to guilt me into stepping up, and it ended up with me shaming them. For a moment, no one said anything. Finally, my dad let out a long sigh and stood up. You're right, he said quietly, his shoulders slumping. We made mistakes. We thought we were doing the right thing, but we messed up. We should have handled things differently. We should have treated you better. My mom nodded through her tears. We're sorry, Daniel. We really are. We thought we were helping Alex, and we didn't realize. She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. I didn't say anything. What was there to say? Their apologies didn't change anything. They couldn't undo years of favoritism or erase the hurt they'd caused. We want to make it up to you, my dad said, his voice heavy with regret. We don't know how, but we want to try. I shook my head. Anything you do would be too little. It's too late for that, I said. They left a few minutes later, defeated and apologetic. My mom kept looking back at me as they walked out the door, like she was hoping I'd change my mind. But I didn't. I wasn't interested in rebuilding a relationship under these circumstances. I needed more than words. I needed time and space to process everything, and they needed to focus on fixing the problems they created. As for Alex, word on the street is that he's still blaming everyone else for his failures. Apparently, he's been telling people my parents sabotaged him by not giving him enough support, which is hilarious considering they handed him everything. Classic Alex. The good news is I feel lighter these days. Cutting ties wasn't easy, but it's been worth it. I've started focusing on myself for the first time in years, traveling, picking up new hobbies, and just living my life without their baggage weighing me down. To anyone out there dealing with a similar situation, it's okay to walk away. It's okay to choose yourself. Sometimes the only way to move forward is to let go. Thanks for reading. I'll keep you updated if anything changes, but for now, I'm focusing on me, and it feels good.